back to the hospital, and you couldn't get anybody to respond because it was the weekend and the doctor was golfing and the da-da-da was happening,
Yeah.
and all of that was going on. That's when your mother, as I recall, we thought that that was going to be it. They came
Right.
in and a priest was there, and we thought that was it. And then that Eunice came right out of it after
She did.
she
That was
said,
an
"I
incredible.
ain't going yet."
Yeah, that
It's
was an
incredible.
incredible moment that she. But I can also say that when my mother died, which is something that I had like worried about really my whole life. My mother was sick when I was little, and so kind of her impending passing was always very much in my life. You know, it was like, was this going to happen? So I always thought I'll never be able to survive that. And after my mother passed away, 2 weeks later, my uncle passed away. And Oprah had been at my wedding. She was at my mother's funeral. And then she called me right after my mother died and said, I'm going to have a gathering for you. We're going to call it Team Maria. And I'm going to have all the people who love you. They're all going to come to my house, and we're just going to have this girls' weekend. And I was kind of like, what? You know, like I was like, what is she talking about? And I was like, okay, that sounds like nice. This was like three. She goes, it'll cheer you up. It'll be good. And then my uncle died. And then she's like, I think we should still go ahead with the Team Maria. I was like, wait, what? I'm like, and it was like literally a month was something like that, or a month or 2 months after both of those things. She invited like 20 girls to her house. And we just
Who all
had
knew you.
what?
All of them knew you.
Well, yeah,
Remember? That's when we all chose a word. We
yes,
all
that's
chose
right.
a word.
What was the
Yeah,
word?
and I have that
We all chose a word.
she had everybody choose a word about me, and she engraved them on rocks, or they were colored not rocks, but kind of crystal colored stones.
Stones.
Yeah, stones, excuse me. And then she put them in this beautiful box that looks kind of like those books behind her, and presented it to me. And everybody wore the same clothes. And we had lunch, and it was just this really sweet, loving, like moment of like, you've got a posse, you've got a group. We're here. We love you. You're gonna make it through.
What was the word? Oprah, what was your word? Do you remember?
I was just getting ready to tell you that. Hoda, you are the interviewer.
Is her picture?
I was just going to say, and you know what my word was? My word for Maria was cherish. Because I cherish everything about her. I cherish her frankness. I cherish her directness. I cherish her honesty. I cherish her truth. I cherish her sense of searching for the truth. I cherish her courage. I mean, for me, the word was cherish.
I
I
love
cherish
that.
you.
I love that because I don't feel like in my life I was cherished and pushed, motivated, all of these kind of really strong words, but not cherished. And I think that our relationship, what started, as she said, in Baltimore, we're both living in the same what do you call that? Like not condos, but it was just like apartments. They were like, and she was the upstairs and I was in the downstairs, and she had clothes and furniture.
They were called luxury garden apartments, Maria.
Okay, luxury garden apartments. We were like, and we had a supermarket, and we were like, both working at this thing, and we would eat in the supermarket because they had these big French fry kind of potato things, and we had like no social life at all. Although she was on TV,
Because all we did was work.
yeah, we
All
just
did was
worked
work.
at 8, and she had, kind of furniture, and she had clothes, and she was like, and she would go to church and speak.
Wow.
And in Baltimore, and I was like, oh my God, look at you. You're like speaking in a church, and like, this is so huge. You're going to like do something really big. And I see you in a church, or I see you speaking.
Yeah.
But she, it was it kind of in a funny way, a beautiful time because it was quiet and it was intimate and it was, kind of real. And those are the moments I think that, like, when I'm just sitting alone with you and I just come and hang with you, or like, that's what I cherish in my friendship, when we just sit there and like, can you believe can you believe that, or remember this, or did you, that kind of stuff, which is just because so few people you can really talk to honestly, and that you feel safe, and that, like, when I walk out the door, I know nothing's going anywhere.
Nothing.
Yeah.
These days, the news never stops. The morning's headlines change by afternoon, and by the end of the day, it's all totally different. So let's get into it. What's happening right now, what it all means for you for an hour every day. I get it. I know that it can be hard to keep up. So let's get started together and go from there.
Hey, I'm Hallie Jackson, and we have a ton going on tonight. Here's the deal.
Hallie Jackson Now, weekdays at 5 on NBC News Now. For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app. Our world is facing some complex issues. Chuck Todd breaks them down. Every Thursday, a deep dive into a new subject.
Instead of covering a lot of topics in one show, we're going to focus on one and take a deeper look at how it impacts America.
Exploring and explaining the critical stories that affect our future. Meet the Press Reports. All episodes of Season 3 are now available on demand on Peacock.
We began our cross-America journey tonight, St. Louis, Austin, here in Nashville. From Washington, D.C., the site of our nation's capital, you rarely see.
It's your last move.
Was talking smack part of this? What are you doing for teachers who feel that they're being stretched too thin? Did you understand how prevalent hunger was in your own community? Nearly a dozen hours after the eye roared ashore. There is some late-breaking news.
All right,
Today is now a podcast, available every morning. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
When you guys were young, hanging out together,
We're still young.
and of course you are. But how did people ask you guys out on dates? Were you dating? How was that seen during that time in your life?
I was already going out with Arnold, so I was 22, and you had not met Stedman at that point. Yeah, you were going out. You can take it from here.
No. I didn't meet Stedman until 80. Listen, I was in bad relationships all the time, but Maria is correct. I mean, both of our lives were consumed by working. That was when I remember Maria once remember that boss that I had, that little short guy that was so annoying. Anyway, I remember putting in my timesheet one week, and it was 102 hours I'd worked in a week. And he came up to me and said, "Well, I can see you're not a team player." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, you live close to the station," because Maria and I live within a mile of the television station. And so when you lived that close to the television station, they expected to be able to call on you if there was, a 4-alarm fire, or if there was an accident or whatever. You just get out of bed because you're the closest reporter. And so the bottom line is, we worked all the time. We took a lot of abuse that we wouldn't take today.
Yeah.
We did a lot of things that...
That's true.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
I didn't have a whole lot of time for dating because my life was just really consumed by, literally, you just go to work and then you get up the next day and start the same whole thing all over again. And I went to church. I was very, 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 because when I left Nashville in 1976 and came to Baltimore, the last thing my father said, and the most imminent thing for him, was find a church home. You must find a church home, which is what happens in the African American community. If you're raised in a church culture where you're going to now leave that city, you need to find whatever is going to be your church base, which means basically that you're connecting to a kind of community that you've been familiar with, that's going to help support you, if things don't go well, or if things do go well. So I found my church home and had my one friend, Maria, who lived in the same apartment complex. My one friend, Gail, who lived in Chevy Chase. So And that was my life. That was our life.
And it kind of I would say to Oprah's unbelievable credit, or, that her life, went from there obviously to Chicago, and then went through all of these kind of changes and everything. It's still a very core little group.
Isn't that funny?
And which I think is so kind of awesome. And like when I've had a little, if I've had a dinner for Oprah's birthday, it's like the same, like she has a core thing there. And you feel safe in that core friendship. And it's just when you've had somebody who's gone through the birth of all your children with you, right? Your marriage, your divorce, the death of your parents, the death of yourself, the rebirth of yourself, the evolution of herself, the change of herself. And it's kind of like if you don't think that off, you just step back and you're like, damn, like how blessed am I to have that for that length of time, the duration of that time, and all the laughs and tears and joys, and not have lost our way.
Make the most of your day with
Today in 30. We give you a mix of everything you love about our show in a mere 30 minutes.
Savannah and Hoda bring you what you must know. The biggest moments of the morning.
One Republic!
Exclusive interviews.
Why did it work for you?
You're right. I am more talented than the rest.
And important headlines.
Major medical news this morning.
Watch Today in 30 on your schedule. Streaming every day on Today All Day.
We began our Cross America journey tonight, St. Louis, Austin, here in Nashville. From Washington, D.C., the site of our nation's capital, you rarely see.
It's your last one.
Was talking smack part of this? What are you doing for teachers who feel that they're being stretched too thin? Did you understand how prevalent hunger was in your own community?
Our world is facing some complex issues. Chuck Todd breaks them down. Every Thursday, a deep dive into a new subject.
Instead of covering a lot of topics in one show, we're going to focus on one and take a deeper look at how it impacts America.
Exploring and explaining the critical stories that affect our future. Meet the Press Reports. All episodes of Season 3 are now available on demand on Peacock.
The Sunday Sit Down with Willie Geist podcast. It's the conversations you want to have with the people you'd love to meet.
Get your money's worth.
Unedited, unfiltered.
See ya!
Sit down with Willie and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Today is now a podcast available every morning. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Wow. And there was a moment you told me, Maria, about you and Oprah that still to this day touches me. And we were in the makeup room, Oprah, Maria and I, and she said there's one single song that she said soothed her.
Oh, this is the best story on earth.
On earth.
Wait,
on earth.
I am so excited because just so you know, she played that song for me. We had an eye lock, Maria and I was crying. Like I felt it. And I got chills all over my body. And she said, I'm going to tell you a story about this song. Will you?
Yeah.
Will you
No, you let
Oprah,
her,
you tell it?
and then I'll interrupt you.
No, Maria, you tell it. Well, you tell your version.
Yeah,
and
you
I'll
tell your
mine.
version.
Okay, my version is, so she was having a birthday.
Yep.
And she had a very small group of girlfriends in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
She just kind of built her place in Hawaii. And she was having, it was at the beginning of OWN, which was a rough period.
Mm-hmm.
Needless, rough.
Yeah.
And so we're sitting.
Not just rough. Every newspaper, everybody was saying you should have kept your day job. The struggling OWN. What'd you leave the Oprah show for? It's disaster. It's about just one story after another story after another story. And new people would sit up and joke about it. It was Schadenfreude at its greatest. It was really a bad time for me. So,
Yeah,
go ahead.
really a bad time. And she was, she was kind of being raked over the coals publicly and everything, and she was really hurting. So we went to Hawaii And we were sitting in the dining room, and the Sonatum Coram came on the music thing. And she and I both started like singing to the song. And I was like, how do you know that song? And she's like, how do you know that song? And I was like, oh my God, that song has helped me through. And this was after I had just gotten separated. And she's like, oh, that song is helping me. And so we started then talking about this song and the singer. And she was like, and Oprah's the kind of person that if she's throwing something for you, she'll find out your favorite musician, she'll find out your favorite cake, your favorite people, and do all this sort of stuff. And it doesn't often come back that way, right? Because she's not organizing her own birthday, right? So I got up from the table and I was like, can you imagine, like if this had been my thing, she would have gotten that woman to come and sing for me.
No. Can I interrupt?
Okay.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
I actually said to you,
Yes.
oh my God, I thought to have her here. And then I thought, nah, it's just my birthday. But if I were doing this for you, if I'd have known you really liked her, I would have done it for you.
Yes.
But I didn't think I could do it for myself.
Okay. Exactly.
Okay.
So,
I said, oh my God, I love her so much.
Yeah.
I got to do it for myself, and then I thought, no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But if
so
it
that
was your
tells
birthday, I
you
would've done it.
something about her.
It does, right
Anyways, so I got up from the thing and we started making calls. I started going to try to find her.
Yeah.
Right? I thought to myself, she's in California. I know she lives in California somewhere, but I didn't know her. I don't know anything about. So I called the guy who had introduced the music to me. Do you know her? Anyway, long story short, by the next morning, this other woman who was at the party, we find this singer. Turns out she's a mile down the road.
Oh my God.
So we call her. And she's doing some concert or something.
Right.
So we said, look, you have to come over.
In Paia. She's doing a concert in Paia.
Okay, in Paia,
30 minutes
which
from
is
my house.
30 minutes from her house. Okay, what are the chances of that? The odds.
What are the chances?
None, zero. So we convince her to come over because every evening, like right before dinner, we sit on the porch and we look for what Oprah calls as God moments, right? You call the God moments where we look out at the ocean and everything. We have a little cocktail and there we're on the porch. And so we had worked it out that we would be sitting there and then we'd have a little toast and you would hear, there were producers, like I was originally a
Did
producer.
Oprah know about anything?
No, she didn't know anything.
You had no idea this was happening.
Nothing.
Okay, this is
nothing,
good.
Right.
Yes.
So I'm like, okay, well, we'll start with this toast and then the music will
Yeah.
start and she'll think the music is on the, house radio. And then you dressed in your white thing, you'll come down the steps. And it'll be just this moment. I have goosebumps. And so we go out onto the porch. We have our cocktails. I'm sitting in the rocking chair next to her. We're looking. I'm like, wow, look at this like ocean. It's beautiful. And she's still kind of like, like not in a great mood or whatever. And then we're like, look at the sunset. All of a sudden, you hear this music.
Oh gosh.
Start to come on, and she's like,
Sonatum Core.
Yeah. And so she starts to hear the music, and I'm holding her hand. We're like looking at the thing, and all of a sudden, right? You take it from here.
No. So I'm
No.
thinking it's the speaker. Somebody's playing the music from the speaker because we play Sonatum Core, and then the song. And then I turn, and Sonatum Core is walking down the stairs of the porch because she was on the upstairs balcony.
Yeah.
She is walking down the stairs of the porch, and it was the most out of body, surreal. I think tears literally shot out of my eyes because I couldn't connect that.
There's
Just yesterday, it was midnight. We were at the table.
Yeah.
Midnight, we were at the table with me saying, if I'd have known you really liked her, I would have made sure that she was here. But I didn't think, I'd do it for my own birthday. And she's now on my front porch for sunset cocktails. I mean, singing, if by thy grace I sing your holy name.
By the way.
And by the
Is that
way,
a moment or what?
That's a moment.
It's
That's
a
the
moment.
best moment.
It was really one of those kind of, for me, once in a lifetime moments. It also was like, that she wouldn't do something for herself that she would do for other people.
Yeah.
And it was really a God moment. And as God is my judge, stuff started to turn around after that.
Is that right, Oprah?
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah.
That was the moment for me, because if something that miraculous can happen, if something that close to being, that was pure alignment. The fact that the music comes on when it comes on, we're sitting at the table, I'm humming it, and Maria goes, "How do you know that song?" I go, "How do you know that song?" Because Sonata Makura is not something most people are.
Yeah.
And so, and in less than 24 hours, that person is on your front porch. I just thought, okay, God is with me. It's still possible to be aligned. It's still possible. And so I started to shift the idea of this struggling network to what an awesome thing to be able to have a network in your name. And what a great opportunity to be able to say something, whatever that is you want to share with the public, in a way that, represents you, and stop looking at it as this god awful, oh, I made a mistake, and being defined by other people's idea of it. So, and that moment, by thy grace, I sing your holy name. That was it.
It was so beautiful.
We began our Across America journey tonight, St. Louis, Austin, here in Nashville. From Washington, D.C., the site of our nation's capital, you rarely see.
It's your last move.
Was talking smack part of this? What are you doing for teachers who feel that they're being stretched too thin? Did you understand how prevalent hunger was in your own community? Sometimes the news can be difficult and overwhelming for kids to understand.
Will coronavirus come back next year?
So to help make sense of it all, we've created a newscast just for them. Man, you know a lot. We hope your family will watch Nightly News Kids Edition. People really don't know what's going to happen. Only a dozen hours after the eye roared ashore. More good people than bad people, right? 5 seconds. 4, 3. There is some late-breaking news 4 hours into the Iowa caucuses. Private Hammer delivers.
All right, it just made too.
Is this an issue about guns, or is this an issue about social justice? This supply chain issue has been a problem for months. Do you concur that this is going to get worse before it gets better? The question is, are you now more open to packing the court? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
Nearly a dozen hours after the eye roared ashore. There is some late-breaking news.
All right, it just made
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
Today is now a podcast, available every morning. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
By the way, I've since fallen in love with that song deeply, and it is also the song that goes off at 3:15 in the morning. That's my wake up. By Thy Grace. Yeah, it's the best wake up because you gently wake up. How do you, when you have an on your knees moment, which sounds like that beginning part was that the lowest that you'd seen Oprah, Maria?
Well, I saw that was, by that time Oprah, was a big public figure.
Yeah.
So this was a big, public,
humiliation for me.
Yeah, it was a humiliation for her, and I knew she was taking it itself. She had just come off of the show. That had been a really big moment, right? And she was just getting, knocked around. And people don't remember, like, who starts a network? People don't give you any grace space. They don't hold space for you to get it right, right? They didn't give her any space. They just expected her to go from the Oprah Winfrey Show into, a network that was all humming and doing and, that was from nothing, but would be there 24 hours with perfect programming. They didn't give her any time.
Yeah.
And so I think that it was, a moment where she had to, in a way go back to her grit that built, her career. And people forget that. They just saw her as Oprah Winfrey.
Right.
And, but
the other thing, Hoda and Maria, the other thing was, it was a big learning lesson for me, and By Thy Grace, and the fact it was that song and all that that meant, and that my friend Maria and all the other women at the table had the thought at midnight to try to find her. All of that energetically came into play with being able to switch my head around. And because prior to that night, prior to that moment, which was like the last moment of the evening, we had been at the table, and I remember laying my head down on the table, sobbing.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah,
Sobbing, saying, "Oh, gee, I think I've made the worst mistake, and why did I do it, and blah blah blah." And so to go from that moment sobbing on the table with my friends to the next day, By Thy Grace, showing up, was really transformative for me. It was healing. It's exactly what you want your friends to be there to do. Number one, you want your friends to stand in the gap for you and to say, you are not whatever definition you're using to define yourself. So part of the problem in that moment was that I had been so accustomed to succeeding that the idea of not succeeding felt like felt like I personally failed, not like the network failed. And I later realized, as I talked to lots of businessmen who would buy companies and sell companies and do ventures and lose on this thing and gain on that thing, that men don't look at it the same way. This is a business that I started, and this business works, it's great. If it doesn't, then I move on to the next.
Right.
And I was taking it so personally, like this personally means that I have failed because I am listening to, all the naysayers and all of the schadenfreude. But that moment with my friends, led by Maria, By Thy Grace, is what started to turn me around. But I think all of us need that thing to shake us up.
Yeah, and I think what Oprah's also saying, can you imagine, like, your head is on the table, you're sobbing, you think, like, it's over, you're a failure, and, soon after that, if people hold space for you and hold you or whatever, that you can get a new lease on life, that you can look at something differently. And I think that's a kind of a life lesson for everybody, that in that moment when you think, like, I just can't go on, I'm a failure, so it can turn around your feeling, your perspective, and your belief in yourself, right? And she went on to build a successful network. When people said she was finished, she was done, it was over, and, has gone on to, extraordinary achievements since then. So I think people, I think it's funny, like, people say to me, like, even when she did the Harry and Meghan interview this year, like, oh my God, Oprah can interview. I'm like,
hello.
I'm like, yeah, and I remember telling you that, you're like, well, it has been 10 years since I was like, but people forget that how hard, how hard people work and work their way up. It's not like Oprah became Oprah. Like, there's grit. There's all-nighters. There's Nashville. There's Baltimore. There's, sitting across keys. There's working the way up. There's being yelled at. There's being told you're, to this, to that, to whatever.
There's being yelled at. There's being harassed. There's being, all kinds of looking the other way in order to get ahead. I mean, I think we both came up at a time where there were aggressions all the time. But you knew that if you were to complain about it or say anything about it, you would just be out. It would be over. There was no recourse. And understanding that you just keep your head up and keep going. Keep your head up and keep.
What are you doing for teachers who feel that they're being stretched too thin? Did you understand how prevalent hunger was in your own community?
Is this an issue about guns, or is this an issue about social justice? This supply chain issue has been a problem for months. Do you concur that this is going to get worse before it gets better? The question is, are you now more open to packing the court? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
Make the most of your day with
Today in 30. We give you a mix of everything you love about our show in a mere 30 minutes.
Watch Today in 30 on your schedule, streaming every day on Today All Day.
Sometimes the news can be difficult and overwhelming for kids to understand.
Will coronavirus come back next year?
So to help make sense of it all, we've created a newscast just for them. Man, you know a lot. We hope your family will watch Nightly News Kids Edition.
Is this an issue about guns or is this an issue about social justice? This supply chain issue has been a problem for months. Do you concur that this is going to get worse before it gets better? The question is, are you now more open to packing the court? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
Today is now a podcast available every morning. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Make the most of your day with
Today in 30. We give you a mix of everything you love about our show in a mere 30 minutes.
Watch Today in 30 on your schedule, streaming every day on Today All Day.
Today is now a podcast available every morning. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
What are you doing for teachers who feel that they're being stretched too thin? Did you understand how prevalent hunger was in your own community?
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
Are you guys, people seek both of you out for advice. I know that I do. And I know that people do, whether it's on a podcast or just in person. I know everyone's on your IG Live, Maria, everyone, anytime Oprah says anything, everyone wants to lean in. Are you still learning? Like, what's the most recent kind of revelation or life lesson you've learned at this stage in the game? I'll start with Maria.
At this state, well, that I'm continuing to grow and continuing to change and evolve. I think that, to me, if I think back, 20, 30 years, I thought I'd be cooked by this time. Or I thought I'd, knew everything there was to know. And I actually feel, so alive at this age. I feel lighter. I feel freer. I feel more alive. I am surprised by that. I am surprised by how awake in my own life I feel. So that, to me, is a godsend. It's a miracle, actually. And so I think that that's something I never thought about.
Mm-hmm. Oprah, what about you?
The thing that I love most about my life is the sense of gratitude and appreciation. I mean, I never, for one day, actually, have lost the sense memory of being raised in dire circumstances. I remember one night here, the frogs were so loud that I could hear them through the doorway, and I went out on the balcony and I was like, wow, this sounds just like Mississippi. It sounds like being on my mother's porch in Mississippi. And then I just thought, well, it certainly is the frogs may sound the same, but the life from Mississippi to Montecito is just like light years in difference. But I am constantly reminded of, the last time Maria was here, we were walking around, and we just took a walk around. I think socially distanced walk at the time.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about our lives and the fact that everything that has happened to me, I actually earned it. So we were talking, I think, about imposter syndrome. I was telling about, some people say they have imposter syndrome, and I'm like, I don't even know what that is, because everything that I have gotten, I work for it, I earned it, and I live in this beautiful space surrounded by trees that I love, and have been able to create this life, but have never once forgotten the life that I came from in order to get to here. And so there's a sense of contentment and peace that comes with that, that actually, I don't think I'm surprised by it as this. I'm just so pleased. I'm just so pleased to be in a space where I'm no longer, Maria and I talked about this for a while, no longer having to make decisions that please other people and don't please you.
That is freeing. That's got to be freeing.
And I think the other thing that, if I do say so myself, that we've done well is, I think sometimes if you're friends with somebody really well known, then other people come to you, can you do this? Can you get so-and-so to do that? Could you get so-and-so to do that? Could you? And I, from the very beginning, you know, like she was off limits. Period. To everybody and even in my own family.
Wow.
So if my brothers wanted to like go to her, and they found a way around me on their own.
They do what they do.
But I have been, this is devoid of anything else. It's like I protect it. It's, and vice versa. And it's, and that has been a challenge at times where people are like, oh, could you just please, could you just ask, oh, you could do. And if we've ever done things for each other and with each other, it's from us to the other. And I think that's kind of been a big part, I think, of safeguarding this relationship, or at least in my mind.
This is...
Yeah, I would say so too.
Yeah.
Same here. I mean, people would try to get me to get something to you or a member of your family, and I just go, I don't play that.
I don't play that. I don't. Last time I saw Oprah was actually 2 weeks ago, because I was up there, and she was like, I said something like, we were talking about her having earned this, and I said to her, you've also earned the right to rest. You've also earned the right to rest.
Yes.
And I remember you looked at me kind of like, what? I was like, you've earned, whatever you do now, should come from a place of total desire and whatever, because you have earned not only this place that you've built, which is, when I first saw it before she moved in, she's like, I want to show you this thing. And I was like, this is a long way from Cross Keys. That's all I want to say. There wasn't even a fountain in Cross Keys. But I was like, you've also earned the right to rest. And I think that's a big...
Sometimes the news can be difficult and overwhelming for kids to understand.
Will coronavirus come back next year?
So to help make sense of it all, we've created a newscast just for them. Man, you know a lot. We hope your family will watch Nightly News Kids Edition.
These days, the news never stops. The morning's headlines change by afternoon, and by the end of the day, it's all totally different. So let's get into it. What's happening right now, what it all means for you for an hour every day. I get it. I know that it can be hard to keep up. So let's get started together and go from there.
Hey, I'm Hallie Jackson, and we have a ton going on tonight. Here's the deal.
Hallie Jackson Now. Weekdays at 5 on NBC News Now.
Today is now a podcast available every morning. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
The Meet the Press Chuck Todd Cast, free wherever you get your podcasts.
Today is now a podcast available every morning. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
I know we only have a couple minutes left because you guys have been real generous with your time, but what is
I think women don't do that. I
What?
think women in particular don't do that.
Yeah.
Women don't give themselves the right to rest.
Yes.
I remember, I was working with this meditation therapist when I was doing tour last year, just before COVID hit hard, and we would do this big meditation in the arenas, and whenever he would say to the audience, you deserve rest, you could see tears flowing out of women's eyes. Men don't cry when they're told you deserve rest, but women start to weep because the very notion that you can give yourself permission to rest is a foreign concept to so many women. So the fact that Maria was reminding me of that on my own doorstep, I was like, what? Oh yeah, okay, thank you so much.
And the
No,
fact,
but it's true.
And the
It's
fact
true.
that when you talk about your own mom who was like, you got to go, go, go. What's
Yeah.
the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? I mean, rest, vacation, relaxing was not part of the plan, wasn't part of the routine.
No, it wasn't allowed. And that's another thing that I've always said when I have gone to visit Oprah. When I went, she would, this sounds so kind of silly, but she would say oh, here's a cup of coffee I made for you.
I
And
brought the coffee and paper to your door.
and I'm gonna cry. It was so moving to me because that's not how I grew up. Nobody brought a cup of coffee or a cup of water to me. And she, in a funny way, even though I had a very close relationship with my mother, I wasn't mothered in that way, right? And she wasn't mothered in her own way but I think in a way we have mothered each other. And, when as I said, when I turned 60, I just gotten, separated. I was in a bad, she's like, I'm going to give you a birthday party. When I was living in a hotel, I'm going to come and sit in the room next to you. I'm going to bring you the coffee. These kind of, little moments in our lives, I think at the end of the day are what, I grew up in a big family and a big life. But when I close my eyes, it's the little moments. It's you having dinner with me. It's her bringing the coffee. It's having a laugh. It's, I think we're all pushed to have these big, big moments. But I think it's the little moments that people aren't pushed to have that really are the transforming moments.
But, and also for me, when you're asking that original question about words that describe the friendship, the thing that grounds me in my friendship, relationship, and cherishing Maria is that she really sees me. Yeah. And she tries to do that with everybody. I know you feel that in your relationship with her. I know her children feel that, and that when she sees you, she really makes an effort to really get you. Mm-hmm. And when you're in her presence, you feel like you're the most important person. And that is a real life skill to do that with people, so that everybody thinks that they are your favorite friend, And that's what you do so well. That's one of the reasons why I cherish you so much.
Oh my God.
I love you. Thank you. Look at that. Thank
and
you.
Yes, and when you went through that whole phase of like, I'm calling people and I'm telling them that I love them, I'm going to say that out loud. That's because you've gone through a period where you'd lost so many people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a funny story about Oprah.
It's a habit to like, just sometimes Hoda, she'll just go, checking in. You okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's one of my favorite texts.
Then she's like, I'm good. Okay, I was just like, buddy check. Where are we? How are we?
It's one of my favorite texts to ever get is that one. Are you
buddy
okay?
Check. Are you
buddy
okay?
Check. I
was going to say this really funny story that I had. Oprah always makes me laugh. I was on her show, and I had a children's book out. I think it was either about death or Alzheimer's. I write always about some disastrous part of life. And just always, my brother was like, could you write something other than like death, divorce, whatever. But I was talking to, she was interviewing me, and it was a very quiet moment in the studio, and people were emotionally having a moment. I think it was about Alzheimer's, or it was about death or something. And I was like, so you have this, so that right away now we need to get going. We need to like get involved and change the world. And Oprah was like, just give the people a moment. Like, I just calm the F down. Just like, let the people cry. We're going to commercial. Then it's doing the commercials like, let the people have a moment. Let them cry. Let them emote. Don't give them an assignment. And I was like, oh.
Make the most of your day with
Today in 30. We give you a mix of everything you love about our show in a mere 30 minutes.
Savannah and Hoda bring you what you must know. The biggest moments of the morning.
One Republic!
Exclusive interviews.
Why did it work for you?
You're right. I am more talented than the rest.
And important headlines.
Major medical news this morning.
Watch Today in 30 on your schedule. Streaming every day on Today All Day.
People really don't know what's going to happen. Nearly a dozen hours after the eye roared ashore. More good people than bad people, right? 5 seconds. 4, 3. There is some late-breaking news. 4 hours into the Iowa caucuses by the mail deliberations.
All right, it just me too.
The Meet the Press Chuck Todd Cast. Free wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah.
That was a little Eunice coming through.
A little Eunice.
Yeah.
I remember my favorite Eunice story is I was on vacation and I was on a boat out in the middle of the Caribbean.
Tell it.
Oh yeah, this is genius.
Wait, I want to hear.
And I had seen, we had been docked somewhere, and I had seen Eunice and said hello and all, and she goes, I think the tsunami had happened.
Yeah,
She goes,
it was
what
the
are you and Maria going to do about this? What are you and Maria going to do about this? I was like, well, it's a tsunami. I don't know what we can do. And so apparently she was not happy with our conversation or what I thought the result should be of that conversation. And I'm in the middle of the ocean in the boat, and Eunice has rowed out to the boat. And they're like, there's a woman with a pink swim cap in a boat outside. And she says she needs to see you. She needs a meeting with you.
That's true.
What? I come out.
Yeah.
True story. I come out, and Eunice goes, I'm serious. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it?
I'll never forget that as long as I live. She goes, I tracked Oprah down. This was over Christmas vacation. She goes, I tracked her down. I ran down the pier. I went out there. You two have got to do something. There is a tsunami. I said, well, Mommy, I don't, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. Oh, it's ridiculous that she's not doing
Yes, she
something.
did.
And you and she together, it's the both of you just sitting there. I think it's inexcusable. I was like, it was like the day after Christmas or 2 days, I was just like, could you leave her
It
alone?
I was on Christmas vacation.
Yeah,
It was on
that's
Christmas
true.
vacation.
Well, I found her all right. I found her. I found her. I'm all over her.
Oprah, were you scared of Eunice?
I was intimidated by Eunice, no question about it.
Yeah.
No question about it. Because Maria comes from the kind of family, no matter who you are, you're not doing enough in the world. So you come and you sit at the table, and Sarge wants to know, what have you done lately? What are you working on? What are you working on next? What are you working on after that? Maria, you told this story once about talking about a friend who'd gone on a vacation and had decided, what was it, they were going to take a leave of absence or something?
No, was that the one where they were taking a honeymoon with themselves? Was it that
Yes,
one?
a honeymoon.
Yeah.
Themselves, and what
And
happened?
the father said,
Yeah, my father said, I was like, this friend of mine said, I just had this honeymoon with myself. And I was like, wow, you imagine that? So I was like, I think I should do that, have a honeymoon with myself. And this is the most ridiculous, selfish comment I've ever heard.
That's what your dad
from you.
said?
Yeah, it's like outrageous. Don't ever think like that. I was like, okay, all right, I won't. But they were like that with, they would be like, because when I brought Oprah over to the house for dinner, when we were in Baltimore, they're like, what's your friend doing now? Where is she going? Does she have a TV show? Get the people on the TV show. To have her do something. She should have a TV show. And she was on a TV show with this other guy, and she was like the sidekick.
Right.
And I was like, she doesn't really have any power on the TV show, so she can't have a Special Olympic athlete on the TV show.
Man.
Like,
Okay, guys, what was the most, I just have a couple more things. What was the most difficult thing you had to let go of in your life?
most difficult thing. You go first. I don't know.
Ooh, Maria, I'll let you take that, babe.
Most difficult thing I had to. Probably my marriage. Yeah. Or my vision of whatever I thought my marriage was. Yeah. I have a lot of things.
I think I had to let go of this notion that I could make everybody happy, that I could please everybody, that I was going to be the kind of person that everybody was going to actually like. I think coming to terms with the fact that you are never going to please everybody, and you can't be who you are in the world without accepting the fact that there are going to be some people who, no matter how, character driven you think you are, no matter how centered of a moral compass you think that you have, that there are people like, I can't stand her. I really don't like her. You know what I mean? So I think letting go of the notion that you're never going to please everybody.
And does that still hurt or not so much anymore?
Not so much. Listen, 67 things hurt less.
Yeah. What's the best thing about being this age? And we'll wrap it up.
Wow. I think there's a lot of great things about. I remember, Oprah, you telling me, like, when you turn 60, people are gonna start treating you different. And I was like, no, they're not. Well, but I started, I think, slowly in my 60s, have started treating myself differently and started to be kinder to myself. And as I said, I feel lighter to the point of like, I think a lot of my life I spent kind of living to please my parents. and please others, like she's saying. And now I'm really clear about I want to spend my time doing what I love with the people that I love. And
having more fun.
And having more fun. I want to travel. I want to with people that I love. I don't want to travel by myself. I know some people like that, and I don't like that. But I want to experience joy and happiness and connection and deep connection, and I'm able to do that now. My kids are cooked.
Yeah.
I'm single. I'm free. I'm my own boss in so many ways. I'm finally the boss of me. I'm finally the boss of me.
I love that. Oprah, what about for you? What's the best part?
The best thing about how you want to get to this point because you have nothing else to prove. It's just like Maria said. There's nothing to prove. Anything you do, you choose to do it because it's going to bring you pleasure, meaning, enjoyment, fulfill some kind of purpose that you want or desire, but you have nothing to prove. Nothing to prove because you already proved it.
Yeah, we're survivors. And I just want to say that we both love you. Yeah, because we've never done this before.
By the way,
right?
I'm so honored.
We've never done this, and neither one of us knew what we were doing or why we were doing this.
I just said I had to do it because Hoda asked.
Yeah.
And was it last year, Hoda? I sent you those flowers. Hoda did. There was a piece where Hoda did of me on the Today Show. I looked at that piece and I literally said, "I'm still alive, right? I am still living." It was like, it was like,
yeah.
In memoriam, everything you've ever done. It was such a great piece. I was like, whoa. Hoda.
I can, yeah, Oprah's like, I can rest now. I can rest now.
By the way,
Oh my God.
I saved that voicemail. I'll save it forever.
But that's really, because we haven't done this, and like we're friends over 40 years, right? So it's actually, so thank you for asking us both, even though both of us just said yes because it was you.
Well,
you.
I'm honored, man. Y'all, this was beautiful.
And we love you.
I love you both. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for making space for us.
Yeah, thanks for holding space for us.
Anytime. Love
Let's
you
go
guys.
on a trip.
Yeah.
Let's go have some fun.
I'm ready to go.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Great Farms. Hey.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hey.
Okay. I mean, really? Really?
Hey, come on.
Let's go. Come
I'm
on.
doing it.
Okay. Love you.
Yeah. Hold on one second. Don't click off yet. Hold on 1 second, Oprah. We're just gonna do a quick picture. Hold on. Smile.
This is Hoda's new podcast.
Thank you.
Hoda's
oh my
new.
God.
It's called Holding Space or Making Space. Making Space.
Yeah.
Making space.
All
Well,
right.
thanks for making space
Thank
for
you.
us.
I love you.
I'll call you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, Oprah.
Bye.
Bye,
I
honey.
love you.
Bye.
Thank you. Oh my God.
Check 1 2 1 2 1 2.
Oh.
How you doing?
Wait, what?
No, don't do that,
Wait,
Hoda. How you
what?
doing today?
Come on.
You good?
Come on, I got my dog ears going on.
Hey,
the book.
come on.
on. Dog ear in the book.
Oh, you're enjoying it so far?
Loving it.
Oh,
Sounds
man,
like it
thank
was
you
like
so
it's
much.
it was as if you just spoke and it all came out on the pages.
It did. I mean, we're living crazy faith right now, so we're excited.
I got to tell you, I am over the moon to be sitting with you. I'm over the moon to be making some space with you.
Oh, this is awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
I mean, first of all, welcome back to the planet Earth. I know you shut down, you shut your phone down. You took a break from all things media, all
Everything.
things phone. I
Yeah.
mean, this is an important place, I think, to begin, Pastor, because so many of us are locked in. Tell me what your big revelation was by just this simple act of putting all phone, social media away.
Yeah, I think if I could sum it up in one word, the word is margin. And I think about like the greatest things I've ever did or ever done, they came in the margin. It didn't come when I was trying to figure it out. It didn't come when I was trying to make it happen. It came when I made space. And it's so amazing that the title of this podcast has to do with making space. I mean, when you look at my life story, when I met you before, we were talking about my last book, my first book, Relationship Goals. It went #1 New York Times bestseller, first book, crazy response, helping tons of people. But that message came when I came off of a month unplugged from all social media, all internet, and it blew up. And I just feel like there's something that happens when you get revelation, when you get ideas, and when you get new thoughts, when there's margin. And so this year I did it bigger than I've ever done before. I took 100 days and I was gone. I was out of here. We had a new baby.
I want to hear about the babe. But can I just tell you something? Some people would say, you know what would happen? If I took off from my whatever, I would lose my competitive edge. People would be sprinting past me. I took a break and I came back and the world went on without me and left me behind.
That's false. And what it really does is it puts you on a trajectory of unhealth that one day you're going to look up and have all of these things and hate your life. See, what ends up happening is when you don't stop to enjoy what has happened, to be able to look at all of the amazing miracles that are your life, to enjoy the children that you work so hard for. When you do it, you'll look up and you'll run on that motor for 20, 30, 40 years and then look up and not enjoy what you've built.
Yeah.
You'll get off of this treadmill and be like, I've been running so hard to go nowhere. And what happens when you take a break, or from my beliefs, a sabbatical, or a time of extended withdrawing? I learned from the greatest leader I believe that ever lived was Jesus. When you just study him from a historical and a leadership standpoint, he's doing all of these miracles all around the world. But like after these feeding 5,000 and doing all of this stuff, it says, and he withdrew often.
He withdrew.
And I'm thinking about like, if you're like claiming to be the Son of God on the earth, like why in the world would you have to withdraw? Like why in the world would you have? But I believe there's something that happens in solitude that makes you humble. And for anybody that would say, like, you know what I'm saying, they passed me by and this and all that other stuff, you don't realize that each one of us come to this earth with a lane that we're supposed to run in. And it doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. What's for you is for you if you can stay healthy enough to run in that lane. And every time that I take this break or make space, what it does is it gives opportunity for me to recenter, for me to refocus, and me to remember who I am, why I am, and who I'm created to help.
You get messages. You said when you don't seek it out, it comes to you. When you make space, it comes. How does it come to you? How do the messages, how do you receive them?
So something that's a practical practice for me every day is I have what I call quiet time, where I do meditation, prayer, I read scriptures, and I write down the things that I feel strongly impressed on my heart. And sometimes it's things like, go take your wife on a special date, like, and I just feel like impressed to do that. And other times it's like, hey, pray for that family, or go give to that person, or read this scripture over and over and over and over again. And I just follow those promptings. You know, the crazy thing, Hoda, is people aren't still enough or silent enough to even listen to themselves, to be able to see how they're feeling, to be able to see what is being told to them by the people they love and by the things that are speaking to them. And when I make that space every day, it's so crazy that 1 hour out of 24 hours can begin to set the trajectory for my life, my family, and miracles to happen in my life that really make me feel like, I'm just a part of something that's way bigger than me. And I'm just grateful that I get to play a small part.
You know what's funny? It's so funny you're saying this because lately in the mornings, I always write in a journal, and usually it's a gratitude journal, 3 things. But lately I've just been writing like what's on my heart. It's a conversation I'll have with God by myself in the morning.
Yeah.
And for me in the morning, I get up I'm a 3:30 a.m. get up person to get to work. But there's even space then. Like that 20 minutes, because I try to carve it out. And sometimes that's all it is. And I'm wondering, like, what am I supposed to be doing today? How am I supposed to be of service? Then the next morning I'll reflect. I'll say, did I carry out those things that I felt like I should have that day? But boy, and that's 20 minutes at 3:30 in the morning. That's it. That's what it was.
And it doesn't matter what the time is. It's that you set intention for that time.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that in today's society, we let media, social media, our schedules, our children, we're ran by all of the things, and we have not taken charge and prioritized the things that actually help us be healthy and whole and present to the moment. And for me, that's hard for me to say. Like, even saying this to you right now, I sound like a completely different person than I was 3 years ago, because I found that my motor of running and going and making things happen and grinding and all of these words we have idolized in 2021, you know what I'm saying? All of those things were coming from, and listen to me say this, an unhealthy place from my childhood. And I was trying to outrun insignificance and insecurity from something that was so long ago. And now it's the thing people look at me as like, man, that guy has a crazy, I mean, he's always going and everything works. And what I was really doing was running from pain. And it came out looking like so much drive, but it actually was an unhealthy route that I was trying to compensate for. And so when I see people that are so driven and can't take a break and think it's proud to have vacation days they didn't use in this year and all this other stuff, it's a telltale sign that there may be something unhealthy in the past that they're actually trying to work and run their way out of.
Boy, that's very, very
That's loaded.
profound.
That's loaded.
I need to sit in this. I need to make space for that comment. But you are so right, because people are like, I only need 5 hours of sleep. I worked Saturdays. High five, high five. So one of the other things I love that you do that I try to steal, because you have so many good things, and I want to get into the background of your life, but I just want to get a couple of nuggets before we go there, which is,
let's go.
You set intentions for your relationship with your wife, for your relationship with your kids, for your job. Okay, help me, because I want to do this. So how do you do it? What are you doing? How are you improving your relationship with your kids, your wife, your job? What do you do?
I think the first thing that you have to understand is when you say what you desire, it begins to move your life in that direction. And most people are scared to even say what they're hoping for. They're scared to even say, like, you know what? I hope to be working a job that I have time for my family. Like, they won't even say that. And what I've designed my life around is being voice activated, steeped in my faith. And that's why I wrote the book Crazy Faith. That's why I've started to try to give away the plays that I've used. And so the first thing I did, honestly, is got a vision and wrote the vision down and made it plain. And I believe that a lot of people
Give me an example.
Okay, like very basic. Like, I will date my wife for the rest of my life. I said that out loud, but it wasn't enough to say it. I had to write it down. And I had to write it down to the point where it became written down in my calendar every week. So every Tuesday night, we have a babysitter, no matter what happens, and I am going to date my wife. We're going to go to the movies. We're going to go on a walk. We're going to go swimming. We're going to do something together, because there's no way that I can commit my life to all of these other things and then, by the way, kind of make my wife fit into the picture. And when I wrote it down, when I said it out loud, when I let my intention be known and I put that vision down on paper, it's been 2.5 years. And every week we've had a date night, some weeks twice. And me and her are closer today than we've ever been. That's my high school sweetheart. Met her when I was 15 years old, and we've been married 11 years. We got 4 kids. We run a bunch of businesses together, but it did not happen by accident.
Right.
I do not let anybody come in between what I say and what I do so that I can get the end result that we're looking for.
Did something, like a lot of people have problems in their marriages. Yours wasn't perfect either.
Not at all.
Nobody who I've ever spoken to has had a perfect one. So did this intention come from, our relationship isn't working, and unless we do something?
Yes, so our intentionality came from, if you're married more than 5 years, you're not married to the same person you married. And we got a revelation that you keep changing every 5 years, and I needed to relearn who she was. What she used to like, she didn't like anymore.
Yeah.
And so I would do certain things, and I was like, man, that used to really work. Like, that used to really get you going. Like, what happened? And so we made an intentionality that I am not going to pause your growth on the frame that I remember you as.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep learning you. And out of that, I think we had 2 kids, and our son, we found out he had autism. And when we talk about crazy faith, like I'm sitting here and I'm believing for a change in his diagnosis, and we're going to therapies and all this other stuff. And in the midst of all that, I realized that situation changed me and my wife a bunch. And we had to go into a level of intentionality and making space for the new version of who we were to each other and fall in love with that person. And as we begin to do that, we like that person better than the one we married. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we begin to understand, like, man, I love you even more now because we've been through this together, and because you're still here, and because we can still laugh about that. And again, making space made us love each other even more. And I don't know, I'm right after we get off this podcast, I'm gonna go find her. I'm missing her right now. I need to give her a hug and a kiss right now.
By the way, I think that what you said was so profound. The person who you're with now is a totally different person than you were with 5 years ago, although they still sleep on the same side of the bed. They still use the red toothbrush. They still do what they've always done. They are different. And you're right, it is relearning. It's funny, I've been having these conversations with Joel lately about this is who I am today. I used to enjoy doing that stuff, and now I'm this person.
These days, the news never stops. The morning's headlines change by afternoon, and by the end of the day, it's all totally different. So let's get into it. What's happening right now, what it all means for you for an hour every day. I get it. I know that it can be hard to keep up. So let's get started together and go from there.
Hey, I'm Hallie Jackson, and we have a ton going on tonight. Here's the deal.
Hallie Jackson Now, weekdays at 5 on NBC News Now.
Is it easier to pass a bipartisan bill right now than it is to pass a Democrats-only bill? This supply chain issue has been a problem for months. Do you concur that this is going to get worse before it gets better? Are you concerned about the direction of your party? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
Sometimes the news can be difficult and overwhelming for kids to understand.
Will coronavirus come back next year?
So to help make sense of it all, we've created a newscast just for them. Man, you know a lot. We hope your family will watch Nightly News Kids Edition.
Today is now a podcast available every morning. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Is this an issue about guns, or is this an issue about social justice? This supply chain issue has been a problem for months. Do you concur that this is going to get worse before it gets better? The question is, are you now more open to packing the court? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
Today is now a podcast available every morning. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Sometimes the news can be difficult and overwhelming for kids to understand.
Will coronavirus come back next year?
So to help make sense of it all, we've created a newscast just for them. Man, you know a lot. We hope your family will watch Nightly News Kids Edition.
Make the most of your day with
Today in 30. We give you a mix of everything you love about our show in a mere 30 minutes.
Savannah and Hoda bring you what you must know. The biggest moments of the morning.
One Republic!
exclusive interviews,
Why did it work for you?
You're right. I am more talented than the rest.
and important headlines.
Major medical news this morning.
Watch Today in 30 on your schedule, streaming every day on Today All Day.
The Meet the Press Chuck Toddcast, free wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
The Meet the Press Chuck Toddcast, free wherever you get your podcasts.
Have you ever felt something from God and you thought to yourself, like, is this my gut or my soul talking, or is it God? Because I was wondering, how do we, and I've wondered this just for myself, how do you figure out if it's your will or Him?
I have this chapter in the book called Maybe Faith. Okay. And I think it's my favorite part of the book, because people is like, how do you know it's God? How do you know it's the right thing? And most pastors won't tell you this, but I'll tell you very straight. You don't. Like, you don't know at the starting line, is this God? It proves to be God. And this is why I tell people I live my life at 51% faith. If I'm 51% sure it's God, I'm going for it.
Okay.
And because I have the heart to be able to be corrected, and I'm humble enough to say, you know what, I missed that. That I thought that was it, but hey, my bad, guys, really going on. And that's where I've been able to see so many amazing things happen, because some people stand at the starting line and is like, okay, how long is this going to take? How much is this going to cost? Are we going to win? Is this worth it? And they end up living their life paralyzed at a pause at the start. And what I do is I tell people this, I said, it's a lot easier to direct a moving car than it is to direct or steer a car that's standing still.
That's true.
And I really do believe that as you start making the step, like, I'm not sure that this is it, but I'm going to at least start looking up homes in this city.
Yeah.
As you make that step, then there's either confirmation or denials or checks or your piece is not there. And then you'll know, like, well, maybe I need to go back to prayer. Maybe I need to do something else. And as you live on maybe faith, like, maybe this is you.
Yeah.
I see so many good things happen, and it just takes being humble.
Well, I do like that you talk about change, because I think a lot of people say, whether they're in a relationship or friendships or whatever, like, people are who they are. You either accept them or you don't. People don't change. They can change around the edges, but in reality, that's how they were raised. That's the way they're going to be. What's your answer?
I
to
don't
that?
really believe that, because I know who I am, and I know who I was, and I know who I'm trying to be. I was a liar. I was a manipulator. I was somebody who was addicted to pornography and wrong images, and I had a lot of evil in my heart. I only looked out for myself. I was very selfish. Like, that's who I was. It wasn't what I presented, but that's who I was on the inside. And now today, I look at my life and how I give everything that I have to help people, to serve other people, to make exceptions and allowances for people's faults and shortcomings. How that was not me. Like, that was not me. I had a potential, what was it called? I had a case in court for car insurance fraud, and I was a crazy guy. And the fact that I'm sitting here today, and I am all about spreading a message of hope, love, faith, and really helping people become their best versions. I know that transformation is real. I know that change is possible. And I am acutely aware of the grace that we all need to be able to make those decisions.
Did your change, did your moment, did it come like a lightning bolt? Did your moment of change come in baby steps and take years?
Yeah. One of my greatest sayings, and if you come around our church, our organization, you'll hear this all the time: progression, not perfection. I think that if this could become people's mantra, they would be able to do so much more when they allow the little movement forward to be the win, instead of this big, like you said, lightning bolt moment. It wasn't that for me. It was like, this year, I'm going to become better at listening and keeping my word. And next year, I'm going to try to stop eating a gallon of ice cream every night before I go to bed. And this year, I'm going to open my scriptures and I want to read at least 10 minutes a day. And it just has been like
Baby
progression,
steps.
baby steps, baby faith, just making moves. And I look up 10, 15 years later and it's like, you're a pastor of a church and you're talking to hundreds of thousands of people weekly. And I'm like, who are you? That's how I feel.
Do you ever drift away from God? Do you ever?
You talking big language right here, right now. You used one of my trigger words, drift.
Oh.
This year, our word for our church is anchored. And we are trying to get anchored spiritually, emotionally, physically, in every area of our life. But the tagline is, this is the year of the anti-drift.
Oh.
And the one thing about drifting, so you said drifting and it went through my whole body right there. Because drifting is natural if there's not intention.
Say that again. That was good.
Drifting is natural if there is no intention.
Yes.
If you put a boat in water, there does not have to be a storm for that boat to drift. If you just put it there with no anchor, it's going to be out to sea in an hour and a half because there was no intention of dropping an anchor somewhere. And yes, to answer your questions, there are tons of places in my life that I have drifted because I was not intentional. So one of those areas was in my health, very practically. The church is blowing up. I'm having all of these kids. And as the church is blowing up, I'm blowing up. I'm eating everything. I'm fat and happy. I'm eating ice cream. I'm doing all the different things. And this year, when we talk about anchored, I looked at myself and I was 264 pounds. I was completely out of shape, all of those different things. And in a quiet time, I really felt so strongly that this was an area that I had been drifting.
Yeah.
And I made a decision that if I was shown something, I was going to start in crazy faith, making steps toward that. So we started eating better, got a trainer. I literally just finished working out. I'm 229 pounds today. That was 4 months ago. And I'm 229 pounds, almost lost 35 pounds since I made the decision.
Our world is facing some complex issues. Chuck Todd breaks them down. Every Thursday, a deep dive into a new subject.
Instead of covering a lot of topics in one show, we're going to focus on one and take a deeper look at how it impacts America.
Exploring and explaining the critical stories that affect our future. Meet the Press Reports. All episodes of Season 3 are now available on demand on Peacock.
Sometimes the news can be difficult and overwhelming for kids to understand.
Will coronavirus come back next year?
So to help make sense of it all, we've created a newscast just for them. Man, you know a lot. We hope your family will watch Nightly News Kids Edition. What are you doing for teachers who feel that they're being stretched too thin? Did you understand how prevalent hunger was in your own community?
Make the most of your day with
Today in 30. We give you a mix of everything you love about our show in a mere 30 minutes.
Savannah and Hoda bring you what you must know. The biggest moments of the morning.
One Republic!
Exclusive interviews.
Why did it work for you?
You're right. I am more talented than the rest.
And important headlines.
Major medical news this morning.
Watch Today in 30 on your schedule. Streaming every day on Today All Day.
The Sunday Sit Down with Willie Geist podcast. It's the conversations you want to have with the people you'd love to meet.
Get your money's worth.
Unedited, unfiltered.
See ya!
Sit down with Willie and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
What are you doing for teachers who feel that they're being stretched too thin? Did you understand how prevalent hunger was in your own community? Nearly a dozen hours after the eye roared ashore. There is some late-breaking news.
All right,
The Meet the Press Chuck Todd Cast. Free wherever you get your podcasts.
Today is now a podcast available every morning. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
Just one last question, because I want to hear a sermon right now. I feel like I wish I could hear one. But is there, and I don't want to pin you down right now in case you can't, sometimes you can't remember, you've done so many great sermons, but was there one that really resonated with people in a way that surprised you? I mean, I know I'm feeling like we're having one right now and we're just having a podcast, but was there one that sort of sticks out in your mind that you could share with us for a little bit?
Yeah, I think it would be the first message that I ever did of Crazy Faith. I came off sabbatical. Like literally, this was my first message after being off for 6 weeks. And when I got up and spoke, I told people, I brought 2 chairs out on the stage, and one was a kiddie chair and one was like an adult chair. And I was telling them, I said, most of us don't have faith in situations, circumstances, and places if it doesn't look strong enough to hold us up. And I brought this big guy out on stage and I said, which chair would you want to sit in? And he, of course, said the big chair. Yeah. And I said, what if I told you that the small chair was manufactured to hold you up? What if I told you this was God's will for your life? What if I told you that it can carry your weight? Which chair would you choose? And he said, I'd still choose the big chair. And I said, doesn't this sound like many of our lives, that we would rather choose the thing that looks good than the thing that was built for us? The thing that really other people would say is not really the best for us, but the manufacturer or God tells you, like, I know this doesn't look like what you thought, but I want you to sit in it. I said, what if I sat in the chair? Then would you sit in it? And he was like, maybe. And so I sat in the kiddie chair and we were about the same size. And I said, now would you sit in that chair? He said, I don't know. And I said, sit in the chair. I said, look how much time you've wasted being able to stand on your own when something was designed for you that looked different, but really was designed to hold up your weight. And then when that man sat down in the chair and it held him up like he was being cautious, the whole auditorium began to shout, and you know what I'm saying? And because it was a picture of what so many of us are living. We're living this idealistic life. Like, if God would give me this and my chair looked like that and I had this husband and I had this job and I was able to work at this city and all this other stuff. And God said, no, this chair is different. It looks different. It's not probably what you would have put, but I designed it specifically for you.
Just for you.
Would you have crazy faith and put your weight on it? See, the whole thing was, he didn't care if somebody else put their weight on it. But faith is actually putting your own weight and believing and trusting that this thing will hold you up. And I don't know, somebody may be listening right now that has an idea of what you want your chair or your life to look like. And God may have a different chair for you that you're going to have to step in crazy faith and put your weight on it. But when you put your weight on it, how much more exciting is it to be in something that was manufactured for you, your life, your family? And I didn't know it was going to resonate with so many people.
Wow.
But we put that up online and millions of people have watched that message and just started living a life of crazy faith after that.
Well, you are such a unique pastor. You're all by yourself. I mean, you help people with relationships. You talk about things that you don't expect a pastor to talk about. And I love that because it's all part of us. This book, Crazy Faith, is beautiful. And I love the subtitle, It's Only Crazy Until It Happens. Michael Todd, man, what a blast. Thank you.
Oh, we could do this once a week. Maybe we need to start the Mike and Hoda show. We can. Hey, listen, let's do an hour every week or every 2 weeks. Let's do it.
I'll be your sidekick any day of the week. Thank you, honey.
I appreciate you.
Oh, love you.
Thank you so much.
So at the time, I was living in Paris. I was just a couple months out of college, and I was working as a paralegal and pursuing this other, stringer position on the side. And I hadn't been feeling well for a while. It started with an itch, and the itch blossomed into all kinds of mysterious symptoms. I was getting colds all the time and coming down with bouts of bronchitis. But the biggest symptom I had was fatigue. But of course, at 22, everyone is tired.
Yeah.
Everyone that I was hanging out with was working hard and going out at night dancing. And so I didn't really make much of it. And I went to see a number of doctors, all of whom, treated that specific symptom or ailment and sent me home. And toward the end of my time in Paris, I started to get the feeling that my doctors that I was seeing weren't taking me seriously. But I think the truth is I wasn't entirely taking myself seriously. And it was only when I got to a point where I was so weak, it was a struggle to walk up and down the stairs, that I found myself in an emergency room. And within 24 hours, I was on a plane back home to upstate New York, and I got the bone marrow biopsy that led to my actual diagnosis.
To hear the words that you were diagnosed with a specific type of leukemia at 22 is scary enough, but when they said the chances of survival were 1 in 3, I mean, my God, like what goes through a 22-year-old's head?
I think there was this immediate sense of fracture. There was my life before and everything that came after. And, I never returned to Paris, to my apartment, to my job. Friends packed up my things and sent them to my house. And I had this sense, even though I couldn't quite wrap my head around what it meant to have a cancer diagnosis at 22, that the person I'd been before was buried. There was no returning to that pre-diagnosis self.
The cancer fight, and I don't know how you describe it, but usually there's a beginning and an end point for it. I mean, I had breast cancer, I think for 6 or 8 months I went through stuff.
Yeah.
Your timing, the 3.5, was it 3.5, 4 years of going through chemo and bone marrow and chemo again. How did you see light, and how did you survive all those days?
One of the most challenging parts of that experience was the sense of the goalposts moving. I didn't know, on day one that I was going to be in treatment for 3.5 years. And they say you can survive anything as long as you can see the end date in sight. And there came a point in my treatment where I couldn't see that end in sight. And that was the most challenging, I think, to know how to kind of anchor yourself when you're swimming in a sea of uncertainty.
I mean, there are life lessons that come in your worst times. I mean, some change we choose in our life, and some is cast upon us, and you have to figure it out. And I don't know, I remember so clearly how the world got clear. Like, I was never clear. I think I was kind of always mushy about things. Those are my friends. I don't love that one so much, but so what? They're nice. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. And then all of a sudden, you realize, like, my life has a beginning and an end, and I'm not wasting time. Like, that time is over.
Yeah.
Did you have that sensation?
Yeah, I think a lot of people in their early 20s, I had this feeling of time.
Yes.
I had time to figure out who I was, time to figure out what I wanted to do. And that diagnosis brought into immediate, urgent focus the fact that we're all here for a finite period of time. And I felt a strange sense of urgency around time. And I had the same experience. It felt like all the artifice just kind of fell away.
Yeah.
I got clear not only about who my friends were, but maybe more importantly, who I wanted to be friends with and what kind of relationships I wanted to cultivate. And I had such limited energy that I was well enough to maybe do 3 things every day, small things, like write an email, watch a movie, see a friend. And what that meant for me was that I had to get very clear about my priorities.
Wow, that is so true. And there's something so strange about how free you feel suddenly. You didn't even realize you were carrying all that heavy junk around.
Yeah.
It's like I didn't even, you don't even realize it. It's like my shoulders feel lighter, even though you're in the middle of it. So to have a doctor say to you after a bone marrow transplant and chemo again, okay, I don't know if you used the term cancer-free or you are in remission, but to hear those words, what did that moment feel like?
I mean, I had been hoping to hear those words for almost 3.5 years. The goal had always been to survive, and I'd spent 1,400 days working tirelessly toward that goal. And I thought when I got to that place I would want to celebrate. I wanted to feel grateful. I wanted to quickly and organically fold back into the rhythms of living, but instead I found myself in this kind of limbo, this kind of in-between place where on paper I was better, but off paper, I couldn't have felt further from being the healthy, happy, 27-year-old that I'd hoped to be on the other side of all this.
Well, especially because when you spend almost 3.5 years in one space, it's the same thing. The idea that, okay, now this is over, and all your friends or some of your friends and colleagues are saying, oh, great, so now we can go back to the way it was. Let's go out to the bar. Let's go have some fun.
Exactly.
You weren't feeling those things.
Yeah, I wanted to be feeling those things. But, I think often when we talk about things like cancer, the kind of final act or the end of the story comes with a cure. But we don't talk a lot about what happens after. And it took me a while to even acknowledge to myself how much I was struggling. There were so many unanswered questions that I didn't know what to do with. Like, how do I find a job when I need to nap for 4 hours in the day, or my immune system is still sending me to the emergency room on a regular basis? How do I date when I have a 1/4 inch of hair and a port still in my chest? How do I talk about, the side effects of chemo, like infertility or early menopause? Like, all of it felt so overwhelming. And in a weird way, I found myself almost wishing that I was still sick, not because I wanted to have leukemia, of course, but I understood the hospital ecosystem.
Right.
That was the world I lived in for 4 years. I felt comfortable there. I looked like the other patients. It was the outside world that felt scary and foreign and daunting to me.
Is it easier to pass a bipartisan bill right now than it is to pass a Democrats-only bill? This supply chain issue has been a problem for months. Do you concur that this is going to get worse before it gets better? Are you concerned about the direction of your party? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
Our world is facing some complex issues. Chuck Todd breaks them down. Every Thursday, a deep dive into a new subject.
Instead of covering a lot of topics in one show, we're going to focus on one and take a deeper look at how it impacts America.
Exploring and explaining the critical stories that affect our future. Meet the Press Reports. All episodes of Season 3 are now available on demand on Peacock. Make the most of your day with
Today in 30. We give you a mix of everything you love about our show in a mere 30 minutes.
Watch Today in 30 on your schedule, streaming every day on Today All Day.
Sometimes the news can be difficult and overwhelming for kids to understand.
Will coronavirus come back next year?
So to help make sense of it all, we've created a newscast just for them. Man, you know a lot. We hope your family will watch Nightly News Kids Edition.
Is it easier to pass a bipartisan bill right now than it is to pass a Democrats-only bill? This supply chain issue has been a problem for months. Do you concur that this is going to get worse before it gets better? Are you concerned about the direction of your party? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
What are you doing for teachers who feel that they're being stretched too thin? Did you understand how prevalent hunger was in your own community?
Is it easier to pass a bipartisan bill right now than it is to pass a Democrats-only bill? This supply chain issue has been a problem for months. Do you concur that this is going to get worse before it gets better? Are you concerned about the direction of your party? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
These days, the news never stops. The morning's headlines change by afternoon, and by the end of the day, it's all totally different. So let's get into it. what's happening right now, what it all means for you for an hour every day. I get it. I know that it can be hard to keep up. So let's get started together and go from there.
Hey, I'm Hallie Jackson, and we have a ton going on tonight. Here's the deal.
Hallie Jackson Now, weekdays at 5 on NBC News Now.
So I loved your New York Times column. I thought it was so beautiful and riveting and moving. But what I loved so much more was when people reached out to you because they connected with you. You had this way that whether you were sick before or you weren't, or you knew, somehow people felt you, like you reached across and you grabbed them by the heart. And people wrote you letters. And you know, in this industry, sometimes you get a letter and you got beautiful letters and you read them, but then you did something totally amazing. Like I have not heard of someone doing this, but what did you do with those letters that you got?
So, you know, in that year after I finished treatment, I was in the most lost place I've ever been. I knew I wasn't a cancer patient anymore. I knew I couldn't return to the person I'd been pre-diagnosis, but I had no idea who I was. And so I started thinking about these different rites of passages that we have in our culture, these kind of ritualized ceremonies that help us move through transitions, like baby showers and weddings and funerals. And I realized that there wasn't a kind of ritual or rite of passage when you emerge from a long illness. And I needed that. I needed time to reckon with what I'd been through and to reflect on who I wanted to become. I needed the space away from my home and my kind of cancer identity to really kind of come into my own. And so I hatched this kind of boondoggle of a plan, and I decided to learn how to drive.
You didn't have your license?
I did not have my license. I rented out my apartment and I borrowed a friend's car, and I ended up embarking on a 15,000-mile road trip across the country to meet some of the strangers who'd written me letters about their own major life interruptions and their own stories of transition. And they really, you know, those individuals, there were about 22 of them that I visited, became my sort of breadcrumb trail through the wilderness of survivorship. I was always prepared for the other shoe to drop, prepared for something to go wrong. And what I found instead in these encounters and on that road trip was that the world really welcomed me at every turn. I ended up, you know, staying on someone's fold-out couch. I stayed on a ranch in Wyoming with a family of survivalist ranchers. I visited a high school teacher in California who was grieving the death of her son. I went to a maximum security prison in Texas to visit a death row convict. And each of those conversations helped me gain a sense of perspective on my own predicament. But more than that, I think it showed me a way to reimagine community. And it gave me this sense of connection that at a time in my life when I felt so lost and so isolated, really helped me see a path forward.
Are you happy?
I'm so happy.
What makes you happy now?
The strange thing in the last year of this pandemic is I found myself living a version of the life that I had when I was sick, which is to say that my circle is much smaller.
Right.
My life is quieter. And I don't know about you, but I have spent so much of the last decade striving and working and hustling, and I feel so privileged to get to do work that I love. But I've also been thinking about the way that working at that pace can be its own kind of trauma response. So this year for me, my goal has been leisure, which isn't to say I'm not working all the time.
Of course you are. Yeah.
But you know, these small moments that I've gotten to have in the last year of being at home with our dogs, of gardening, of hanging out with my partner, John.
You know, it's so interesting because I sometimes think like life is full of exclamation points. It's like the good ones. You graduated from college, you meet a great guy, you have a baby, you get married, and then on the flip side, it's you get a sad diagnosis, somebody passes away, etc. But most of the days are just Wednesday in the middle. Nothing terrific and nothing horrible, just Wednesday.
Yeah. Something I've been thinking about recently is trying to approach my Wednesday as ritual, washing the dishes as ritual, gardening as ritual, and really trying to kind of slow down and savor that, because it's so easy to move from one exclamation point to the next. But I'm sure, as you know, when you get a scary diagnosis, you're not thinking about the things that are on your resume. You're thinking about the people you love and wanting to spend time with them. You're thinking about the things that nourish you. And yeah, all the rest doesn't matter as much, and it falls away. We live in a country that has this culture or this anxiety around accomplishment. And in this season in my life, I'm trying very hard to resist that and to kind of center myself back in those things that I love, the same things that I loved as a little girl, the dancing and music and writing and family.
Speaking of music, music has always been a big part of your life?
Music has always been a big part of my life.
Which explains your very handsome and awesome boyfriend. If you don't know John Baptiste, and we're going to bring him in here in just a second, but he's a cool cat. Boy, is he something special.
He is.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
The Sunday Sit Down with Willie Geist podcast. It's the conversations you want to have with the people you'd love to meet.
Get your money's worth.
Unedited, unfiltered.
See ya.
Sit down with Willie and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Sometimes the news can be difficult and overwhelming for kids to understand.
Will coronavirus come back next year?
So to help make sense of it all, we've created a newscast just for them. Man, you know a lot. We hope your family will watch Nightly News Kids Edition.
Our world is facing some complex issues. Chuck Todd breaks them down. Every Thursday, a deep dive into a new subject.
Instead of covering a lot of topics in one show, we're going to focus on one and take a deeper look at how it impacts America.
Exploring and explaining the critical stories that affect our future. Meet the Press Reports. All episodes of Season 3 are now available on demand on Peacock.
These days, the news never stops. The morning's headlines change by afternoon, and by the end of the day, it's all totally different. So let's get into it. What's happening right now, what it all means for you for an hour every day. I get it. I know that it can be hard to keep up. So let's get started together and go from there.
Hey, I'm Hallie Jackson, and we have a ton going on tonight. Here's the deal.
Hallie Jackson Now. Weekdays at 5 on NBC News Now.
What are you doing for teachers who feel that they're being stretched too thin? Did you understand how prevalent hunger was in your own community? Our week-long journey across America, from Washington, D.C., outside of our nation's capital, you rarely see.
It's your last move.
Was talking smack part of this?
The Meet the Press Chuck Todd Cast, free wherever you get your podcasts. Is it easier to pass a bipartisan bill right now than it is to pass a Democrats-only bill? This supply chain issue has been a problem for months. Do you concur that this is going to get worse before it gets better? Are you concerned about the direction of your party? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
Today is now a podcast available every morning. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm sitting smack dab in the middle of a love story. Okay, so you're 13 years old. You're both geeks. I know you are at 13 because nobody was not a geek at 13.
Yeah.
So are you guys close to the same age?
Yeah, we're about a year and a half apart.
A year and a half apart. Mm-hmm. So, John, do you remember your girl from band camp at age 13?
So here's what I remember.
Uh-huh.
I remember Birkenstocks. This is not an endorsement.
You had Birkenstocks on?
Before they were cool.
Yeah.
She was ahead. Zuleika was ahead.
Now, and I also must say, I am honored to talk to you because when I was growing up at that time, I was watching you on WWL.
Come on.
So when I was growing up in New Orleans and Kenner, Louisiana, you'd be on TV. My first time leaving was to go to this band camp. First time leaving home and being somewhere for the summer. You go somewhere for the summer for the first time, it's like a new world.
Yeah. Where was band camp? Where were you?
Saratoga Springs.
Oh, so you took a big trip. This was not a nothing. All right.
Upstate New York.
So you were already, what instrument were you playing, John, at the time?
Piano. And I saw her in the courtyard. And this is, again, I thought this was maybe a New York thing. People wear Birkenstocks. Nobody was wearing that in New Orleans.
No, they weren't. Those were not cool in New Orleans.
And I thought what immediately came to my mind was, oh, she's like a hippie. Like granola. Like that
Crunchy
vibe.
granola. And how did you, at 13, did you have any confidence level at 13? Or were you like a lot of 13-year-old girls? You did? She did.
Definitely.
I was a 13-year-old going on 20. I thought I was far more mature than I actually was.
That's impressive. Most 13-year-old girls feel so incredibly awkward.
I was just coming out of what I call UDS, ugly duckling syndrome. I'd just gotten contacts for the first time to replace my bottle-thick glasses.
Okay, so now at 13, that's when the crushes start happening. Was there a crush, or were you all just friends?
No crush.
Yeah.
I was very much a late bloomer. So I was into music and video games and martial arts and chess, things like
Eclectic. You got a nice array.
All the nerdy activities.
Yeah.
I was about to say all the introspective kind of introvert activities.
Yeah. So
you see.
So like when you saw him, did you just thought a nice kid, nice guy?
I remember thinking he was a little strange because I think I tried to initiate a conversation and conversation was not happening.
You were not into it? You just weren't a conversationalist then?
I think there's a glorious awkwardness in coming into your own at that age.
Yeah,
and
it's
I think
weird.
It's strange, but it's beautiful strange. And I feel like I've kept that until adulthood. But I still, I feel like we probably tried to speak, and at that time anybody who I talked to, and she's always been a great communicator, always magnetic, always able to communicate
She's got it.
the emotions that other people are feeling. I noticed that about her immediately. But there was no crush. We linked later in college, and that's when we started to really become more friends.
You know what's weird? On my first week at Juilliard, I was on the one train with my friend Michelle, and I had I hadn't thought about John since band camp several years earlier, which when you're a teenager feels like a decade. And I see this young man on the train who is singing to himself and playing the air piano. And people were kind of staring because even in New York, that's not a sight that you see every day. And I looked at him and I turned to my friend and I said, "That's John Batiste. What is he doing here?" And I said, "That's the man I'm going to marry someday." And I just blurted it out and forgot about it.
I want to stop for a second. On the one train, you knew you were going to marry John?
It was like one of those things you just say, and I didn't think about it, and I didn't give it much weight.
So is that the last you see of her before you know she's not feeling well?
No, we saw each other. This is in college, my first year, her last year of high school. Then she doesn't end up going to Juilliard. She goes to Princeton. Then at Princeton, she has this incredible time. We don't see each other. In passing, we see each other at performances here and there. We have mutual friends, but we're not really as connected.
Yeah.
Then she has a going away party because she's moving. You move into Paris. And I went to the going away party with a mutual friend of ours. But then that was when there was a spark at that party, the going away party. But she was going away.
Going to Paris.
So
bye.
That it was not, the timing.
You were pining, John. A little. You're pining a little.
We had a moment.
We had a moment.
Well, you got to have a moment. I mean, come on, going to Paris, y'all. There's love in the air. Yes. Okay, so let's fast forward to, how did you learn that Suleika was ill, was not well?
So that same friend, Michelle, told me one day, we were playing, my band, we would play in public places often, not for money, just to bring the music, revelry, joy. We were playing in the subway one day, and she told me, and I gathered the rest of my band, because at this time it was just a few of us, and I gathered the rest of them, and we went to the hospital And you know, I hadn't heard that she was that ill until that moment. It was a real moment of clarity that I had to do something. And what I do is music. I just felt I needed to bring that to the situation to help in any way that I could. So that's what I did.
But that must have been emotional because you didn't expect to see her in that way.
I guess there's an impact that a person has on you that you don't know the full extent of until you're in a moment of crisis. So it felt like I needed to do something in that moment. Even though we weren't super close friends, it felt like, oh, I really connect with this person. I respect this person, what she's all about, what I know of her. This is important. So that's why we went to the hospital. We played, and it was a beautiful experience.
Did you feel like you were doing some good?
Yes, I felt like we were doing good, but that was a special thing for our relationship, a special time to you know, you see each other through these different phases, and you see what a person is like when they're 13, 14. Then you see what a person is like at the beginning of college. Then you see what a person is like when they finish college and going out into the world. Then you see what a person is like when they're going through tremendous duress, the impact of that on their life, meeting the family, understanding, you know, how that impacts a whole community.
But it's also a testament to John, because John is someone who shows up in the difficult moments and who keeps on showing up, not just for me, but for everybody. And he's always been that way.
Well, you got to show them. You got to show people you love them. I urge everybody out there, you show the person in your life who you haven't told or you haven't shown your love, show them.
So what's the future with you two?
Well, we were talking about the kids that you have in your life. That's a beautiful thing to have family. We look forward to something in that realm. You know, there's complications.
Yeah.
You know, I don't feel like that is ever a barrier to family, because you can
plenty of
figure
ways
out.
to make a family, right?
Yeah, I think it's possible. It's all about love.
Well, and I'll just say, like, I think one of my big anxieties coming out of this illness was finding a partner who understood that and who wasn't sort of scared of having hard conversations or awkward conversations around things. And I remember talking to John about infertility early on as a result of my treatment. And he said, there are many ways to make a family, and it's its own kind of creative act. And you've just been understanding and open in a way that I wish were the norm, but that I feel very grateful for.
She's got to be real.
Cool.
She's a very real person.
By the way,
eloquent, but she can say she's real. So it's easy to have real, authentic conversations.
Well,
you know, I think John is one of the most creatively brilliant people I know, but what I've loved observing and learning from is the way creativity informs every aspect of his life, including our relationship. And so one example of that is we both travel a lot for work in non-pandemic times, and because of that have to spend sometimes several weeks apart. And he came up with this idea early on in our relationship, which was to write each other a letter every day by hand. Instead of doing like your morning pages or writing in a journal, he would write a letter by hand, take a photo of it, and text it to me. And it brought me back to those letters that I got on the road trip.
Wow.
And I think that there's sometimes certain things that you can only say in the written word that you don't even maybe know you need to say that come out when you're writing letters. But you're always doing stuff like that. You're always finding creative ways for us to deepen our relationship and to stay connected.
by the way, that is the most beautiful and thoughtful and smart. I was thinking, write a letter, but how are you ever going to get it? You take a picture and text it so you can actually read the handwriting. Brilliant.
Right?
Joel and I are stealing that. Thank you. I have to tell you, it's so beautiful because watching your story from the beginning unfold, and I've been reading and watching a lot leading up to this interview, and sitting here in this moment and looking at you two is so beautiful.
Yeah.
Love is in the air, baby.
Oh.
Yes. All right, Suleika, John, thank you guys so much. We appreciate you being on Making Space. I have been waiting for this interview patiently because I have always felt weirdly connected to you in so many different ways because I feel like our lives have these weird parallel paths. And the more I learn about you, the more I feel it. And I just want to say I've missed you for a long time. I'm just happy to sit with you. But how are you? You're in Nashville. What's happening?
Okay, I'm good. I'm in Nashville. We are doing a little bit of touring, mostly on the weekends. Boys are 11 and 14.
No, they're not.
I am seriously not a cool mom anymore. I'm like, you just don't know, Mom. You don't know, Mom.
You don't get it.
You don't get it.
Can I remind you of something? You were here at the Today Show, downstairs in the dressing room with your boys when they were little. And I went down there and I remembered thinking, watching you with your kids, I want something like that one day.
Yes. And I'm telling you, I have more friends. I'm just like, you can do this. Babies are coming in and you don't get the wrong kids. It just doesn't happen that way. And my kids so clearly not only picked me, but picked each other. And man, what a cool honor. You know, I tell my kids all the time, I am so honored to be your mom. You know, I mean, I even told my 14-year-old that last night because he hugged my parents as they were leaving, just involuntarily. My dad's 89 and my mom's 84. And I said, after they left, I said, I love you so much, but I just want to tell you what a cool person you are. Because not everybody just wants to volunteer a hug. You know, whether it's your grandparents, you know, an elderly, you're a teenager. He just got up and hugged him, and I was just like, man, you're an awesome boy with a giant heart. And he's like, I know, Mom. I know, Mom.
Wasn't it your
Like,
mom,
I know.
Cheryl, at the beginning? Because, I mean, I remembered thinking, like, I never spoke out loud the fact that I wanted children because I thought I had missed my window. So I thought, I hate to say something out loud that I know can't happen. So I didn't speak it. And one day I was walking with a girlfriend down the street, and she said, well, me and you, we didn't want to have kids, you know, so it worked out great. And I said, well, I actually did. And I just thought I missed it. And I just remember saying it out loud and how weird that was to speak it and then to say it again. And it kind of like made it real. Sometimes I feel like even if you whisper your secret into the mirror, the bathroom mirror, at least it gives it breath and life.
Yeah.
Did you always want kids? Did you talk about it when you were younger? Did you always think about it?
I just never didn't think I would have kids, you know, and I think I was thinking of it in the context of family. It wasn't like I saw myself being pregnant. I couldn't wait to experience having a baby inside of me. It wasn't so much that. It was much more about the wonder of getting to raise a person, you know, and obviously, as you know, Hoda, I was 45 when I adopted my first one. I was 48 when I adopted my second one. I had the gift of getting a lot of things out of my system before I had my kids or before I got my kids. So there wasn't anything that I felt like I was missing. If I stayed home and something was going on, I just didn't feel like I was missing anything, that I wanted to be anywhere else. And that's a gift. I think if I was in my 20s and even early 30s trying to be in the world that I've lived in for the last 28 years, I might have been pulled in a lot of different directions. But, you know, there's one thing about a woman and the biological clock. You know, we get blamed a lot for the demises of relationships. Well, her biological clock, or she wanted kids and I wasn't ready for that. And it's such I don't want to say a sexist thing, but it does feel like that, you know. And I remember my last relationship crumbling largely because that is what I wanted. I didn't want to be somebody's girlfriend and raise their kids. I didn't want to be a stepmom and not be made a wife and a mom. You know, it's sort of like being in a relationship with someone, but being also the babysitter, but not getting to be the real parent. And yeah, that did crumble that relationship. And when I came out of it, it was my mom, and I came out of it and also had breast cancer and went through that. And it was my mom who said, why don't you just get a surrogate and get some sperm? And I mean, this is like Bernice Crow from tiny town in Missouri. My head is like exploding. Like, what did she just say? Like, just have my own babies? What? But it was that. It was her saying, look, you know what? If you adopt, you have a family around you who will stand at the altar with you at baptism and say, we are his community or her community. And that's what they did. And that's kind of what gave me the life raft, to not limit myself to that. Oh, you got to be married. You got to be stable. Then you have kids. My story didn't lay out like that, but the story I was telling myself limited what I thought I could have until somebody stepped in and said, wait a minute, your story doesn't have to look like your mom and dad's story.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to look like the conventional family that you had. Families look like all different things.
Nearly a dozen hours after the eye roared ashore. There is some late-breaking news.
All right,
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
These days, the news never stops. The morning's headlines change by afternoon, and by the end of the day, it's all totally different. So let's get into it. What's happening right now, what it all means for you for an hour every day. I get it. I know that it can be hard to keep up. So let's get started together and go from there.
Hey, I'm Hallie Jackson, and we have a ton going on tonight. Here's the deal.
Hallie Jackson Now. Weekdays at 5 on NBC News Now.
The Meet the Press Chuck Toddcast. Free wherever you get your podcasts.
Nearly a dozen hours after the eye roared ashore. There is some late-breaking news.
All right,
What are you doing for teachers who feel that they're being stretched too thin? Did you understand how prevalent hunger was in your own community?
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
You know what's interesting? You said something in the middle of that story that struck me too, because I was diagnosed with breast cancer at the same time my relationship was falling apart. And what was weird about that moment, when you just mentioned it, I had this weird feeling. But what I remember about it was, it was kind of strange because I felt like I had two pains going on at the same time, and I couldn't go down the rabbit hole on one. Like, I was so angry at him, and then I had to go in for my test, and they were like, you need a mastectomy. And then I was so mad at the doctors, and why me? And I ate apples and ran in Central Park, and what are you talking about? I was so mad. And then I was thinking about, but what about, and him? But it was almost like, and I kind of liken it to like having two kids, and one kid's coloring on the wall, and the other kid's spilling flour all over the floor, and you can't, like, you only have so much attention, so you can't get super mad at that kid because you got this kid over here. So weirdly, your grief is kind of lessened. And I wondered in a weird way if that, I've often wondered, did that help me in some strange way? I couldn't get so depressed on one thing because I had two things to worry about.
Yes. Well, I mean, not to analyze my last relationship, and it was a public relationship. There were a lot of facets to it, but it was a relationship that that I seemed to keep going back to. And I think when I got diagnosed with breast cancer, that was like, oh, wait a minute. I think we have to really look at this, and you have to put yourself first. And once I got that message, I really had to sit down and learn how to hold an emotion. I remember my friend who I used to say was kind of psychic, but he said, no, everybody's intuitive. It's just whether you really want to know the truth. He had said to me, he's like, emotions are the gateway to awakening. And I had not really understood that until I had to go through a real grieving process. I had to not do that thing that we get so good at, which is oh, just don't think about it. Just stay busy. Just make yourself busy. Don't dwell in it.
Yeah.
And that is the antithesis of what we need to do for healing. We need to actually sit with the pain, the anger, the grief, all of it that goes along with getting to the other side. The only way to get through it, plow through it and experience it. And so for me, I just embraced it. I said, I'm not going to make a record. I'm not going to pick up my guitar. I'm not going to journal. I'm actually going to sit and be angry and be sad and grieve and all that. And when I came out of it, I just felt like, oh, okay, I remember now who I am. And all these events, I think, kind of help us remember who we are. We get so far away from it sometimes with all the messaging that we put on ourselves about who we are or we aren't. And it was a serious cleanup.
Wow, I didn't realize.
Cleanup on aisle 7.
No, well, I love no records and no journaling. That's interesting, just to sit in the middle of it. Did you ever? I never. And this is probably not healthy. This is me. I never really had a follow-up conversation after it was over. That was the end. And that's how I played it.
Well, I mean, I think in some situations, man, I'll tell you what, I am blessed to have a wise mom, but she said, no matter what you think you're going to get from that conversation, you're never going to get what you think. And I mean, that's part of, I guess, the end of a relationship. There's not generally closure unless you both are, that if you communicated that way, you might not have split. But in my relationship, I was not ever going to get the kind of answer I thought I was going to get.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I don't know if you're like this, Hoda, but I have measured myself for almost my whole life by my productivity, and that's what gave me self-worth, and not just the quantity, but the quality. It couldn't be 10 songs. It had to be 10 great songs, and they couldn't be 10 top 200 songs. They had to be 10 top 10 songs. It's like
it's exhausting.
At a certain point, it's exhausting, and you wind up never feeling fulfilled. So, sometimes in order to fill yourself, you have to sit with it.
Sit with it. Wow. Yeah, because I know it's like when you put a song out, they're like, well, when's the next one? You put an album out. When's the next one? You write a book. When's the next one? You're like, oh my God, how about this one? How about if we sit with this one for 1 second?
Can we just look at this baby right here? Look at this cute chubby baby.
Oh.
Is this an issue about guns, or is this an issue about social justice? This supply chain issue has been a problem for months. Do you concur that this is going to get worse before it gets better? The question is, are you now more open to packing the court? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
People really don't know what's going to happen. Nearly a dozen hours after the eye roared ashore. More good people than bad people, I know, right? 5 seconds. 4, 3. There is some late-breaking news 4 hours into the Iowa caucuses. Private Banner delivering.
All right, it just me too.
Today is now a podcast available every morning. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app. Make the most of your day with
Today in 30. We give you a mix of everything you love about our show in a mere 30 minutes.
Savannah and Hoda bring you what you must know. The biggest moments of the morning.
One Republic!
Exclusive interviews.
Why did it work for you?
You're right. I am more talented than the rest.
And important headlines.
Major medical news this morning.
Watch Today in 30 on your schedule. Streaming every day on Today All Day. For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
The Meet the Press Chuck Toddcast, free wherever you get your podcasts.
Today is now a podcast available every morning. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Is this an issue about guns, or is this an issue about social justice? This supply chain issue has been a problem for months. Do you concur that this is going to get worse before it gets better? The question is, are you now more open to packing the court? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
I was just thinking back to the infancy of your career, and I know that people look at you and think, they see you. First of all, just I watched you. I think at Radio City. That was one of my final concerts before the world shut down, and I loved every second of it. But I was just thinking about people probably think, well, that was somehow it was easy for her. But I loved knowing that, and I think it was 1986. You were pounding the pavement and they were like, no, darling, no, not
Yeah.
you. Nothing,
Oh,
no
yeah.
doors were opening, and you were talented. So what was happening there?
Well, I look back on it and I think, man, I was so lucky to come up when I did and not come up now, because
Yeah.
now everything is so brand oriented and so all about self promotion. But back in the old days, back in the dark ages, I moved from St. Louis, where I was a school teacher, and I thought, well, I was 25 no, I was 24. And I had a bunch of tapes, and I thought, I'm just going to go out to LA and see what happens. And I got a Thomas guide, and I found out where all the studios were, and I took my tapes to every studio. And if I get them to the studios, and somebody will pick it up and listen to it and discover me, and it was literally like an episode of Friends. And, slowly I wound up getting a little bit of work, and then I overheard some backup singers talking about the Michael Jackson audition, and then I crashed the Michael Jackson audition. And I mean, it just
Crashed the
it's
Michael
funny.
Jackson audition. Just
Yes.
even to say that out loud.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I think part of what was in my favor was my naivete. I mean, I just didn't ever think, I just thought, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? Sorry, you can't come in. You weren't recommended. Well, it's hard to explain, but all I would say is that what seemed like an overnight success, my first album didn't even come out until I was almost 30.
Oh, really?
So, yes, and 30 by all intents and purposes in the rock and roll world. I mean, I'm old enough to be, at 30, probably Olivia Rodrigo's mom, right? I can remember meeting Taylor Swift on an airplane, and she was literally a teenager, and I was like old enough to be her mom. So yeah, and I've been really lucky. I've had now. God, I hate to even say it, but I'm getting ready to turn 60. So
Let's just
I'll be 60 in February.
Let's sit with
And
that,
so I've had
girl.
30 amazing years. I've had an incredible journey, and I don't know that you can even have that kind of career anymore, because the attention span is so shrunk and everything is so fast and all about social media and here today and gone tomorrow. I feel lucky that I had those pound the pavement years where nobody would give me a record deal because I was a blue-eyed soul singer is what they called it. Back in the day when Madonna, I mean, it was all about Madonna and Paula Abdul, and people were like, we don't know what to do with you.
Yeah. Who are you?
So
wait,
who-
you said the word 60. How did
said
that
it. There, I
how
said
did
it.
that feel coming off your tongue? How do you sit with 60? How does that feel?
You know those little bumps you get on the side of your tongue that are like a little canker sore or whatever? That's what it feels like. No, I mean, yeah, I don't love it, but I have to say I'm really at this point in my life I am happy. Something really changed after the cancer episode and getting my kids, and if I never got to sing another song, I would still feel the joy that I feel right now. And that's a good place to be, for somebody who's always measured themselves by shucking and jiving through, life. Like, look at me, I can twirl, I can sing, I can play the bass and the piano, and to be able to say, you know what, I love my life. It's a great place to be.
Now, what has motherhood given you that your work couldn't, that relationships couldn't?
Well, I mean, motherhood has changed. It's created a barometer for sure. I mean, I don't make any decisions that aren't pretty well decided by virtue of what my kids have going on. So, although that I'm sure irritates everyone around me, I don't plan anything without, like, I've already been told by my 11-year-old he doesn't want to go on the tour this summer.
Oh.
He wants to stay home and play baseball and hang out with his friends.
So now what do we do?
Well, we got invited to play in Europe the first week of school. I don't want to do that.
Okay. So you're not
So
doing
I mean, we're gonna we've been learning the lesson of, first of all, compromise, and secondly, friendly. What is it? Not tyranny, but when you're the ruler of a country, this is what happens when you're 60.
dictator?
You can't think of words. Friendly dictatorship. Yes. So if it doesn't work in the compromise, then there's the friendly dictatorship. But yeah, I mean, I would say that I had to really, before I could be happy being a mom, I had to be happy. And that was the first thing. And then being a mom has been the greatest gift and the greatest occupation. I mean, I have full respect for moms across the board. Single moms, working moms, even married moms. Being a mom is no joke. It's 24 hours a day. And unless you're going to let somebody else raise them, you are on call 24 hours a day.
These days, the news never stops. The morning's headlines change by afternoon, and by the end of the day, it's all totally different. So let's get into it. What's happening right now, what it all means for you for an hour every day. I get it. I know that it can be hard to keep up. So let's get started together and go from there.
Hey, I'm Hallie Jackson, and we have a ton going on tonight. Here's the deal.
Hallie Jackson Now. Weekdays at 5 on NBC News Now.
Sometimes the news can be difficult and overwhelming for kids to understand.
Will coronavirus come back next year?
So to help make sense of it all, we've created a newscast just for them. Man, you know a lot. We hope your family will watch Nightly News Kids Edition.
These days, the news never stops. The morning's headlines change by afternoon, and by the end of the day, it's all totally different. So let's get into it. What's happening right now, what it all means for you for an hour every day. I get it. I know that it can be hard to keep up. So let's get started together and go from there.
Hey, I'm Hallie Jackson, and we have a ton going on tonight. Here's the deal.
Hallie Jackson Now. Weekdays at 5 on NBC News Now.
The Meet the Press Chuck Todd Cast, free wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you have room for another love in your life, do you think?
I do.
Do you already have that?
I don't.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
I don't. I mean, I don't want to say sadly. I mean, our family is I mean, we're complete. It's tricky now. I mean, it's just tricky.
Sure.
You date somebody and you pretty quickly decide how they might fit, or if they unequivocally, you wouldn't even let them near your kids. You know what I mean? And truth be told, I just don't feel like I'm missing it anymore. I mean, I love the idea of it, and I would love to be loved and to love, but my first loves are my boys, and whatever I bring in or whatever comes in, I'm open. I'll just say that. I'm open.
You're open. When it came down to, my girls were adopted too. They're 4 and 2, and they know they're adopted. Obviously, I've told them, and I know more questions are coming as we go. And I guess I'm looking for a little advice because I don't really quite know. Like, first I thought, should I volunteer information? I thought, no, let me wait till they ask me. There's such tricky conversations to have. How did you know how to navigate those waters?
Well, I had 2 different situations with my boys. I knew Wyatt's birth mom, and I did not know Levi's birth parents. But what I did with Wyatt was I made his story. I made a book, The Story of Wyatt, and I had pictures of the day he was born. My mom and dad were there, and I got to take him home. He was 4 hours old. And so I had all these pictures, and it explained who everybody was. And it talked about how, I'd asked God to be a mom, and that I knew that God was going to take care of me, and that if I was supposed to be a mom, I would be. And that lo and behold, God brought you into my life. And, but that he came through somebody else's tummy, but I got to be his forever mom, So anyway, he, from a very early age, not only was not interested in it, didn't want to see it at all.
Oh, okay.
And even really up into the age that he was able to understand it. Well, actually, period. He's not wanted to see that book. He hasn't been ready. He chose his life, and he didn't want to know about the rest of it. My Levi is he's very pragmatic. There is nothing he will not say or ask. If you want to know if you look fat in a pair of jeans, he will tell you. And he's right off the cuff. Were my birth parents short? Because I really want to play basketball. I mean, these are the things that matter to him, He asks questions, and he has the story of Levi as well. And he likes it. He doesn't want to look at it, but he's going to be my, I'm going to go out and find him on my own. And I've told both my boys, when you are ready, when you become old enough, like 18, I'll help you. We'll go find him together. And nothing will come between the way you and I love each other, but you have a lot of love. So, and you love people in a lot of different ways, and families look differently. No, but neither one of them have asked me why their birth moms gave them away. And some of those questions will be hard. I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, but I do have that fear of, okay, someday when I'm older, they go find their younger mom, and suddenly I'm going to spend Christmas at my mom, and or with my real brother, and I get emotional about it, and I get scared. But you know what? It's like it's like I tell my dad when he's worrying, there's no point in worrying about it. It's not going to fix it.
Yeah.
When you get there, you get there. So that's just the way I'm approaching it.
I think, that sounds healthy. And I like this sort of God's got this. It's sort of like, because I have those feelings too. And they don't ask many questions now. They're super young, but they do know a lot of things. So I literally, some days I get this ouch in my stomach. I'm like, okay, I got to be ready. Like, how's this gonna go? What do they think when you're on stage? Are they wigged that you're up there killing it, or do they think it's
early days? They didn't really understand it. Like, I've got videos of both the boys coming out in their PJs. I had this wonderful nanny who's now my assistant, and they would always come say goodnight before they'd go to bed, like at 8:30, and I'd just be getting started, and they'd come out, and sometimes they'd come out on stage in their PJs and do a little jig or whatever. And they just seeing all those people, that's, they didn't really understand what that meant. And then when I started making the record before the last, called Be Myself, and I was making it during school hours, I would go pick them up and I'd bring them back to the studio, and we'd work for another couple of hours. They got to be around during the making of that record and understand, oh, this isn't just something where she goes out on stage and sings songs. She works. Like, it's a workplace, and it's like serious work hours and doing things over and over. And then they got interested in it and got to like learn about some of the engineering stuff. And then it became like, oh, okay, so she's not just famous because she has like All I Want to Do or Soak Up the Sun or the song from Cars. And that made a difference. But, now that they're older, they'll come to the side of the stage and wave, and then they'll go back and want to get on their iPads. And I'm just like, no.
Oh,
no. So they make money by helping out.
Is that how they do?
They make $5 a gig for bringing out guitars. And 2 summers ago, when we were out with Phil Collins in Europe, about halfway through the gig, Levi's like, we're walking off stage, and Levi's like, Mom, can we negotiate a flat rate? $5 a gig doesn't seem like very much. I'm like, are you kidding me? You're 9 years old. How do you know what a flat rate is?
How do you even get that? Wait, are they musical? Do they are any, either of them in the music?
They are musical, but that I think part of it is they came in that way, but also they've been saturated and by osmosis they are musical.
Cheryl, I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much
Hoda,
for
I
visiting
love
with me. I
you.
love you too. Come see me
Let's
when
get our kids to marry each other.
Oh my God, that would be
Come on,
perfect.
let's do it.
Yes, it's not that big of an age gap. 8 years and 10 years.
Yes.
I mean, come on.
by the time they're adults,
Okay, we'll have a date. All right, honey. Good
Okay.
seeing you.
All right, it's good
Take
to see
care.
you too.
You too.
Thanks.
Hi, Jenna.
Hi.
I don't know why I'm thinking this in this moment, but I was just thinking when you very first, had your very first day at work at the Today Show, I don't picture you being intimidated, but I wonder if when you walked in on day one, if you were.
I mean, yes, I think. And I think I was well aware that I was coming from teaching, that it was a total shift in what I'd been doing. I think the other thing that was hard is that the very first time I sat down on the couch, they were announcing like, oh, you're joining the show and let's talk about you. And for some reason, I know this may sound weird now, but that made me uncomfortable.
Talking about
myself.
yourself.
Like telling the stories. I was so excited because then we were flying to Dallas and I was going to tell the story of this little boy that I'd met there that I just loved. And that part felt natural to me, the storytelling about somebody else. But when they were talking about me, I just remember like blushing and feeling kind of embarrassed.
I remember the initial days, and NBC's a great place to work and everyone's really nice. But whenever you go into a new place and the people have been there for years and years and years and you're learning the skills, like I know that you're a worker, but I didn't realize how hard you worked until you came to NBC. I mean, you did not stop. You were like, I am going to work. I'm going to work until I learn all this stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, a therapist might say too much because I think, coming into a new place, I'm also aware of what people might think about me. I have a public life. I had a public life really by not my choice, but I was born into one. And so I'm not naive. I knew that people might think, oh, she doesn't need to work. Why does she work hard? And so I think I tried to prove otherwise. And maybe people didn't even think that. I have no idea, but I worked against that.
So I don't think I've ever been anywhere with you where someone hasn't said, "Oh my gosh, I knew your grandfather. I worked with your dad," and I wondered. You always have a beautiful smile, and you're always wanting to hear how, what. Oh yeah, I'll tell them. But I wondered, like, how does that feel?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's always been that way.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because Poppy actually just said something to me. She said, Daddy told me that you used to not like that people knew who you were. And now that you're okay with it. And I was like, that's probably true. I was also like, why are they talking about me? But that's probably true. I think in college in particular, Barbara and I, we were normal kids. Like we had a very normal childhood. We grew up in Midland, Texas, moved to Dallas. It was interesting because we had grandparents who had big jobs, but they weren't in our day to day. So it was foreign to us, which is weird. And I know that that's probably hard for people to believe, but it was. And so much so that when my dad became president, he was like, don't worry, you can be normal. Like he just wanted to give us what we wanted, but like obviously we couldn't. But I think he really believed that.
How did they do that? Like what did they do to make life normal? Like
I think they just never asked us to go on we didn't do one campaign or political event for our dad until we graduated from college.
Oh, wow.
When we were little, we might have done a thing or two for my grandfather. But once my dad ran for president, we didn't go to one thing. Election night, but during the campaign trail, we didn't want to be part of it. And that was okay with him. Like he wasn't using us as his daughters for any sort of, campaign picture or anything like that. We just weren't part of it. And I think I think they allowed us to have our lives. I think one thing that was really fortunate for Barbara and me is that college is this really selfish time.
Yeah.
Meaning you're trying to figure out who you are outside of your family, outside of what the expectations your household has for you. And so we could be in that, we could explore. And so we didn't really think a lot about all that came with our dad's job. We could try to come up with our own identity. And so I think then it was hard. It was particularly hard for Barbara, who went to Yale, didn't know anybody. And she says even now, she's like, I don't think anybody voted for Dad. And even her college roommates were in the front row of some book event. I'm like, no, surely y'all voted for him. And they were like, no,
we did not.
So I think it was particularly hard for her. I went to a school where I was surrounded by friends I already had.
Yeah.
But I think that type of thing embarrassed us.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about how cool it would be to have a twin sister to go through life with. You know exactly what the other's feeling. She just had a baby.
I know.
She's been waiting for that for so long.
It's because we've done everything together, and particularly when we were little, we were in sync. One of us wasn't older and therefore cooler and had a different reaction to something that was happening. We had a really shared history because we were the same age. And so it's interesting how adulthood happens and how I just met Henry and was a child bride and had kids, and that she didn't meet somebody. She had a lot of boyfriends, but wasn't, and people always asked about it. It was kind of disheartening, to travel with her, and people would say well, why aren't you married?
Painful. Oh God.
Painful is the right word. And, actually Condoleezza Rice once said that people asked her too why she's not married. Even now, after she was Secretary of State, after she's done all these things, when you want to ask her about the nuclear code or something, why are you asking that question? And so I think, one of the things that people assume too is why hadn't she had kids? And she actually had decided before my grandmother died, she had a conversation with my grandmother where she had decided to have kids on her own.
She did.
And she talked to my grandmother about it. And my grandmother said, I think that's a really good idea. And so Barbara froze her eggs and was planning, if she didn't meet somebody, to go ahead and do it, and then hopefully meet somebody else, or, I don't, that was her plan. And she was so, I think she was so comforted by our grandmother's response, which was encouraging. She was so encouraged by our 92-year-old grandmother's,
cool
that she thought, that sounds like a good idea.
Do you miss her, your sister?
Yeah, I do. She's going to be moving back here.
Oh, she is. Okay.
So I'll be spending more time with her, but I do. It's interesting how our lives followed this very similar narrative as little kids, and then took this, I just started a family earlier. It'll be really fun to watch her become a mom, and she's FaceTiming me with the baby, feeding the baby a bottle, and all of those, wondering what we should do for Halloween, all of these things that where our narratives are coming back together. And I just can't wait to watch her, become a mom.
I know there's so many, when you think of all these phases of life where you think, I couldn't breathe without the person next to me.
Yeah.
And suddenly they're not next to you.
Yeah.
And
The Meet the Press Chuck Todd Cast, free wherever you get your podcasts.
Today is now a podcast available every morning. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Nearly a dozen hours after the eye roared ashore. There is some late-breaking news.
All right,
Our world is facing some complex issues. Chuck Todd breaks them down. Every Thursday, a deep dive into a new subject.
Instead of covering a lot of topics in one show, we're going to focus on one and take a deeper look at how it impacts America.
Exploring and explaining the critical stories that affect our future. Meet the Press Reports. All episodes of Season 3 are now available on demand on Peacock.
Sometimes the news can be difficult and overwhelming for kids to understand.
Will coronavirus come back next year?
So to help make sense of it all, we've created a newscast just for them. Man, you know a lot. We hope your family will watch Nightly News Kids Edition. Our week-long journey across America. From Washington, D.C., outside of our nation's capital, you rarely see.
It's your last one.
Was talking smack part of this?
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
Back. I'm so happy. I didn't know she was moving back.
Yeah, she's moving back here, which I think will be really great.
God.
Yeah.
Thank God. You're about to turn 40.
Mm-hmm.
How does that sit with you? How does 40 sit?
It's interesting. It feels, I mean, in some ways, I haven't even really thought about it.
Yeah.
But one of the things that's interesting is that my dad had a big milestone at 40. He quit drinking the day after his 40th birthday. Wow. And I actually don't remember him ever drinking. Like, I was 5 years old, so my first memories I had no memory of him ever drinking alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting to me because a lot of his stories, to us, just in our family, sort of begin at 40. His life I think he had like a new lease on life at 40, a really important revelation that he just couldn't, drink. And so that's something. I mean, that sits with me. That sits with me because it was just a really important part of our family. Like that choice that he made really had ramifications that felt all the way down to us. And so that's an interesting thing.
Is that something that he talks about?
Yeah.
He does? Well,
I mean, he does. He didn't, he really just woke up on the day after his 40th birthday. I'm like, Henry, you better watch me on my 40th birthday because I don't really want to quit. I don't think I need to. But he woke up and just decided that it didn't suit him, that he wasn't as present of a parent or a husband as he wanted to be. And so, yeah, he talks about it. I mean, he talks about just how, and I think it's something that's super important that in my life, to just take stock of the choices that I'm making, and make sure that, and it's something that I think about. He had a conversation with me when I was younger and just said, always it runs in our family, alcoholism.
Yeah.
And so think about it, just make sure that you're making those choices that are best for your family. And so I do think about that because I think there is this culture and with motherhood in particular where it's like, celebrates.
Right. Mommy juice. Let's go to the park. We'll meet together.
Yeah, or
it's a lot of fun.
Mommy drinks this.
Yeah.
And I think because I had a father who was, vocal about that choice, that it makes me just think about it in my own life too.
I was going to ask you if anything scares you, and I wondered if that was on the list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it does, and we have other friends, people whose parents were alcoholics, and I mean, I think I feel like I have a pretty good grasp on. I don't feel like it affects me in a way, but my sisters quit drinking. My mom no longer drinks, so it definitely is something that I don't think it's as scary because I don't remember
that part.
My dad drinking too much. And I never really thought, my mom, I don't remember my mom drinking too much. So it's not like, but I think I'm definitely aware of it.
Yeah. Does anything intimidate you? Like if someone were to walk, is there a person who could walk in the room right now who would intimidate you in one way or the other in terms of like, oh my God, I can't believe that person's here. I feel like we've met a lot of cool people.
I know. I'm trying to think. I mean, I think, it's funny because when I was first interviewed for a book that I wrote, Diane Sawyer asked me like who I'd be starstruck by. And I think she expected me to say like Justin Bieber or something, but he wasn't big then. I mean, I don't know who would have been like
somebody
the 2006
like
Justin Bieber, but Justin Timberlake, whoever it was. And I was like Toni Morrison.
You said that when you were that.
Yes. And because I loved Toni Morrison. And she actually said after the interview, she said, "What are you doing now?" And I was flying back to Washington, D.C., and she said, because I wanted to invite you to my house and have Toni Morrison come over. And I was like, damn.
Wait, first of all, I'm So I cannot believe that's who you said.
And she was shocked, and Diane Sawyer is friends with Toni, or was friends with Toni Morrison.
So you've loved, I know you love books because you talk about it. Have you loved them forever? I mean,
yes.
Oh my God.
And Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye I read, I think, my sophomore year in high school. And it totally changed my perspective on everything. And it's hard to even articulate why.
Today is now a podcast available every morning. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
These days, the news never stops. The morning's headlines change by afternoon, and by the end of the day, it's all totally different. So let's get into it. What's happening right now, what it all means for you for an hour every day. I get it. I know that it can be hard to keep up. So let's get started together and go from there.
Hey, I'm Hallie Jackson, and we have a ton going on tonight. Here's the deal.
Hallie Jackson Now. Weekdays at 5 on NBC News Now.
What are you doing for teachers who feel that they're being stretched too thin? Did you understand how prevalent hunger was in your own community? People really don't know what's going to happen. Nearly a dozen hours after the eye roared ashore. More good people than bad people, you know, right? Yeah, 5 seconds. 4, 3. There is some late-breaking news 4 hours into the Iowa caucuses. By the hand delivered.
All right, it just did too.
Sometimes the news can be difficult and overwhelming for kids to understand.
Will coronavirus come back next year?
So to help make sense of it all, we've created a newscast just for them. Man, you know a lot. We hope your family will watch Nightly News Kids Edition.
The Meet the Press Chuck Todd Cast, free wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
The Meet the Press Chuck Todd Cast, free wherever you get your podcasts.
Jenna, one of the things I love about this podcast, and I love since we started, is I really do feel like I'm sitting in a therapy session. I'm meeting people, and I feel like I almost feel guilty that this is a job. I'm like, oh my God, thank you. You know, you pay a therapist. I'm like, so how much? But I remember when Pastor Michael Todd came on, he had such a profound effect on me. There was something about how he viewed the world with intention, how every day he set off with something in mind to do, not just, oh, well, it's another Wednesday. But one of the things that struck me the most was what he said about his relationship with his wife and how he builds on it. He said that we become different people every 5 years. So this is what he had to say.
If you're married more than 5 years, you're not married to the same person you married. And we got a revelation that you keep changing every 5 years, and I needed to relearn who she was. What she used to like, she didn't like anymore. And so I would do certain things, and I was like, man, that used to really work. That used to really get you going. What happened?
I mean, that right there, is that the plainest statement? You've been with Henry for a long time.
It's the plainest, but when you told it to me, it was like a light bulb went off, because I have said to Henry, but why aren't you as joyous?
Yeah.
When I first met Henry, I remember him skipping.
Oh,
he was real? I don't know if he actually did it, but that's the energy that I got from him. He was so carefree. I mean, he just was filled with joy.
Yeah.
I think that's who he is.
Yeah.
But obviously, however many years later, 13, 14 years later, there's other things that have happened in life that he's not the same person. And I shouldn't expect that. But until you told me what the pastor said, I had never thought of it that way.
Me too. I did the same thing when it came to Joel, and think about us too.
Yeah.
By the way, you're a completely different person than the person I met when you started working here.
Yeah.
You're totally different. You're new. You come in with a million ideas. You're so in charge. You are so in charge.
I am.
Yes, you're in charge, man. You have this thing, which I found really admirable, because you could walk into a place where you have learned the craft. You've learned this craft faster than anyone I've ever seen. You have the craziest news instincts that I haven't seen with someone who hasn't been in this business for like 15 years. You're like, let's lead with that. Why don't we take a break here? Why don't we, all those little bits and pieces. But that's just how you've changed professionally. But I was just thinking about the same thing back to me and Joel. It's like, it's the exact same thing. Joel doesn't like the same things he liked.
Yeah.
We always ate at the same place. I never really liked the place.
Yeah.
Why are we eating there again?
Yeah.
I never wanted it. I did it for you. Because now we're just being who we are.
Yes.
We're not pleasing anymore.
Yeah, and I thought his thought about really getting to know somebody,
Yes.
and no matter who, like even parents and friends and siblings, to really think like, okay, this is who I know you as, but you're not even, who are you now? I thought that was brilliant.
Is it easier to pass a bipartisan bill right now than it is to pass a Democrats-only bill? This supply chain issue has been a problem for months. Do you concur that this is going to get worse before it gets better? Are you concerned about the direction of your party? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
Make the most of your day with
Today in 30. We give you a mix of everything you love about our show in a mere 30 minutes.
Savannah and Hoda bring you what you must know. The biggest moments of the morning.
One Republic!
Exclusive interviews.
Why did it work for you?
You're right. I am more talented than the rest.
And important headlines.
Major medical news this morning.
Watch Today in 30 on your schedule. Streaming every day on Today All Day.
Our week-long journey across America. From Washington, D.C., outside of our nation's capital, you rarely see.
It's your last move.
Was talking smack part of this? Nearly a dozen hours after the eye roared ashore. There is some late-breaking news.
All right, isn't it?
The Sunday Sit Down with Willie Geist podcast. It's the conversations you want to have with the people you'd love to meet.
Get your money's worth.
Unedited, unfiltered.
See ya.
Sit down with Willie and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
You know, it's so funny. A friend of mine who I haven't spoken to in like a few months called me just to talk. And I said, well, tell me what happened. And she said, well, my mom passed in September. And it was like a knife in my heart. You know, when you realize that you weren't present for somebody's worst moment. And she said, I'm just going to say one thing to you. She said, my mom told the same story 1,000 times and we all rolled our eyes. And she said, just do this for me. Listen to your mom tell the story again. Whatever her story is, listen and let her tell it to you again and again and again. She just talked about how fleeting it all is. And it just struck me in that moment because as we go through our busy lives doing what we do, someone lost somebody and all she wants to do is listen to the same story just one more time.
Yeah, you know, Henry lost his dad during the pandemic, and we watched this Harry Smith piece about a man, and Henry's dad had polio and was in a wheelchair Henry's whole life. And we watched this piece with Harry Smith together about this man living in a wheelchair who was paralyzed later in life. And Harry said, well, how do you dream? What are you doing in your dreams? And Henry burst into tears and said, why didn't I ever ask my dad what he dreamed about? Because his dad could walk, just wondering, and I think it was such a, I said to him and to everybody, listen to that story, but also ask your parents or your grandparents or whoever it is what they dream about.
Yes.
Ask them about what they were like when they were young.
Yeah.
Have those conversations because you're right. It's like time is fleeting.
Right. Okay. One of the other life lessons, and we learned a ton of them, was when my dear friend Maria and your dear friend Oprah were together. And I had so admired their friendship. But the thing that struck me was Oprah said that she only has 3 friends. And I think she has lots of acquaintances, lots of people who know her, lots of people who talk to her. She has Maria, she has Gail, and she has Bob, who was her trainer for many, many years, but is obviously her dear friend. Her circle is small and it's tight. And I'm not sure if that's a trust thing, like I know these people will always have my back, or if that's all she needs. So what's your friend philosophy?
Yeah, well, what about Stedman?
Stedman's
a lover.
You love her. Yeah.
It's interesting because that surprises me because there's so many people that feel like Oprah is their friend, but I think it's like she's their friend, but she's these three solid, like North Stars almost.
Yeah.
And I think, I have that too, but I do have a lot of friends.
You do.
From a lot of different stages in life, and some of whom I'm, closer with than others.
Yeah.
But I had parents and grandparents who really treasured friendships. I mean, both of my grandparents saw their best friend on the last day of their life. My grandmother had her best friend over to drink a Manhattan, her favorite cocktail. And my grandfather's best friend, Jim Baker, snuck into the hospital with something to make a dirty martini. And I think I witnessed, like, it was so ingrained in my family, in the culture of our family, that friendship, they would say it in letters that I read from my grandmother. She asked about my friends. They included our friends in things.
Right.
So it's part of my DNA. So I don't know. It's interesting. I think I have space for probably more than 3.
Yeah.
What about you?
I have a handful, but I do think when someone new steps into my life, like you, I love the feeling. Like, I feel like I'm a better person because of that. Because I think you can keep your tight circle. We all have our 2 a.m. phone call.
Yeah.
Like, who's your 2 a.m.?
Yeah, probably Farrell, my longest.
Yeah, and mine's probably Karen.
Yeah.
So we know who our 2 a.m. phone
and
call
Barbara
is.
And probably,
Barbara and Howla.
Yeah.
But you're right. But we've got that core group. But I feel like I'm always enhanced when somebody new steps in and says,
too.
"Oh my gosh, I've got this." The other thing they talked about, Oprah and Maria both talked about, which is I think we both could use, is how important it is to just stop for a second and stop sprinting through your life. This is what Oprah had to say.
Men don't give themselves the right to rest.
Yes.
I remember, I was working with this meditation therapist when I was doing tour last year, just before COVID hit hard. And we would do this big meditation in the arenas. And whenever he would say to the audience, "You deserve rest," you could see tears flowing out of women's eyes. Men don't cry when they're told you deserve rest, but women start to weep because the very notion that you can give yourself permission to rest is a foreign concept to so many women.
Oh my gosh.
You feel guilty when you rest sometimes.
It's so true.
You don't. When do you rest?
I try to get into bed as early as I can. Like, sleep to me is
Rest.
I like to go to bed early.
Yeah.
But I try to find time to rest. Right. I had a mom who did not feel guilty about taking rest.
Really?
Like, my mom loved to be in bed.
Oh, she did.
Like, and meaning she would take, if she could, she would take an afternoon nap. No, she just didn't feel. My mom didn't feel a lot of guilt about those types of things. I'm sure she did. Maybe she just didn't share it with us. But that. Like, being in bed, we would be in bed on Saturday mornings and they'd read the paper and we would have our books. Like, that wasn't something she felt bad about. She modeled taking time. That's why she asked why we were workaholics.
Well, I do think that the sprinting through and I was looking at my my week this week, and I was trying to block out some time that didn't involve anybody.
Yes.
And it was almost impossible to find like 1 hour, 1/2 hour.
Just to read or do whatever you wanted.
And I started blocking it out just so I could try to do something, take a walk in the park, do something that didn't involve, and I love my kids and I love Joel and all the other stuff, but something that just gave you like a half a second just to be.
To have some space. Because I feel like if you do allow for that space, you are better.
Yeah.
You're better at all the other things.
Yes.
But she's so right.
I know. And the fact that women wept when someone said, "You deserve that. You've earned that. That's yours."
And I think that might be a newer thing too.
Yeah.
Because I think with, and we see all these studies of women just all, in the last 2 years, exhausted, teaching their kids and taking care of their families and also working from home.
Yes.
It's like, it feels like it's come to a head almost.
Do you know that I know we've both had really long days, so we're all going to make space for ourselves right after this. But I just want to tell you, my last guest on season 1.
I'm so happy to be here.
We are going to have season 2. We're so excited. We're launching season 2. We have a whole array of awesome guests who have just beautiful life lessons, just like you did, Jenna.
Well, I'm so happy to be part of this because I know how happy it's made you.
Oh, it's made my
It's
day.
so fun to watch a friend light up at something that maybe wasn't even a possibility a couple years ago. So I'm so happy to be part of this awesome podcast. And usually on the show, I like to stroke your graphic of your face, but we'll just end there.
Okay, let's end there. Goodbye, Jenna.
Bye.
Mitch, first I want to say I love seeing your face.
Oh, thank you.
There's something about you and your presence, and when you walk into a room, something happens. We should point out, as we're sitting down to do our podcast, you did not come in alone. You came in with 2 young kids who were from Haiti, from the orphanage that you care for.
Right.
And look, there's a lot of things you could be doing in this moment, and your eyes are full right now. Like, I feel like they're full. I guess, why?
Why take care of orphans? Because they're orphans.
Mm-hmm.
These kids that I have with me, one's 15 and one's 16. They've been with me since they were 4 and 5 years old.
Oh.
So, for me, they are my children, and there's 53 of them right now. There'll be more, and then there's some of them going off to college, so we're losing them, we're getting them in. But I don't know, Hoda, I mean, sometimes things just fall in front of you, and it wasn't like I was looking to do this. I'd never had any experience running an orphanage before, that's for sure. I just happened to be down there, and I happened to be at that place, and I happened to ask the guy who had been running it, how come the kids aren't eating? There's no, we're building all this stuff for you, and the kids aren't eating. And he said, well, I don't have any money to operate this, and I'm 84 years old. And in one of those moments, I said, well, I could probably do this. How hard could this be? And he said, thank you, Jesus, hallelujah, here it is. And I've been running it ever since.
Okay, I want to get to the orphanage. I was just so struck by the fact that that's how you walked in here.
Well, they wanted to meet you.
And they were such, what wonderful children.
This is their first time out of the orphanage. I mean, they all said to me, we've never slept anywhere but here in our beds, because, they came at 3, 4, 5, they don't really remember. And I said, well, you're going to sleep someplace else. And when I told them we were coming to New York, I said, just get ready, because you're not going to have seen anything like this.
Right, there's a lot. There's a lot to take in.
It's a lot, yeah.
I just want to take it back, because I feel like you're like full of life lessons, and you write about a lot of them in your books. And I feel like we're all kind of hungry for something, for purpose and meaning, for more than what we do. And the old you was a guy who was like a lot of people who I know. The guy chasing it, the guy running after it, the guy getting, you're an award-winning sports writer, man. You had it all happening. Money was coming in, fame was coming in. You had it all going. And yet somehow in those moments, you didn't feel fulfilled.
No, I'm not alone, like you suggested. I was, and it happened right at my mid-30s, that I was lucky enough to have an intervention by fate. I happened to see Maury Schwartz, who was an old college professor of mine, on TV talking to Ted Koppel about what it was like to die. And it was the first that I even realized that he was dying. And I did not understand it at that moment, but when I look back on my life, that was God or fate sending me like, okay, we're going to put a stop sign right in front of you right now, and you're not going to be able to keep going forward. You're going to have to turn. Now let's see if you turn to the right or to the left. Let's watch what happens.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I turned towards Maury and began going to visit him every Tuesday, and that changed the trajectory of my life along with all its priorities. And ever since then has been, an attempt to try to live up to those things as opposed to the things that were driving me the first 37 years of my life.
Like he was a teacher, obviously, and still is. As you reflect on Tuesdays with Maury now, I know he taught you life lessons in the moment. What were the big ones he taught you then? And then what have you kind of figured out since?
The biggest one or two that he told me that stay with me, I get asked that all the time. What's the biggest lesson for you? Because people have their own. One was death ends a life, but not a relationship. Death ends a life, but not a relationship. Now, a lot of people end at that sentence. They say, oh, that's so profound. I said, well, there's an adjunct to that sentence. And the adjunct is death ends a life, but not a relationship. But you have to have worked on that relationship while you were alive in order for death not to end it. So if you don't spend any time investing in those relationships, death is death. Dead with a capital D. You're done. You're bye-bye. Your money, they're going to fight over. They always do. Your beautiful body's going to rot in the ground next to the fat guy. It doesn't matter. Everything that you worked on here on earth, gone. But the one thing that you had control of, sharing yourself with other people, giving to other people, spending time with other people, teaching other people, you didn't spend any time doing. You're too busy working. So then when you're dead, you are D-A-A-D, dead, gone. So death ends a life but not a relationship if you work on those relationships while you're here. And I was not doing that.
Because you were busy, yeah.
Right. I was busy. that word gets so, busy.
Ridiculous.
How many times have we used it?
Yes.
I've been so busy. It's been so busy. It's so busy.
And
so
it's
busy.
almost like wow, you're busy?
Yeah. People admire the
love
word
that.
busy. Yeah. Great. Oh, great. How's it going? I'm so busy. Oh, great. And, you realize there's such a price to the word busy because it means that you can't, busy in Creole is occupé, like from occupied. And that's more true. When you think about it, it means you're so occupied with whatever you're doing, you're not paying attention to something else. And I was like that. So, that was the first one. And Maury certainly taught me that. And the other big one was giving is living. And this came about, if you have 60 seconds for an anecdote.
Please.
Okay.
You have, by the way, I'm making space for you, Mitch Albom. You please.
Okay. Well,
this is your stage.
It's a new format. I don't know how long I'm supposed to talk. But, I wasn't the only person to visit Maury, obviously, and people came on other days other than Tuesdays. And sometimes they came on Tuesdays, and I began to observe that there were a lot of people who had seen him on Nightline, and they were very uncomfortable with somebody who was dying. They didn't quite know what to say. They would come in all prepared. They have pictures. It was like going to be a session.
A thing, yeah.
And they would go into his office, the door would close, and they would come out an hour later in tears. But they'd be crying about their job, their divorce, their love life. And I would say, what happened? They'd say, well, I don't know. I went in and, I tried to cheer him up, but, after about 5 minutes, he started asking me about my life. And so I started telling him, and they started really asking me. So I really started telling me, he started asking, give me advice. And next thing I know, I was crying. And I went in to try to cheer him up, and he ended up cheering me up. So after a while, I went into him and I said, I don't get it.
Yeah.
Like, if ever anyone had finally earned the sentence, let's not talk about your problems. Let's talk about my problems. It would be you. So why are you doing this? And he said, Mitch, why would I ever take from people like that? Taking makes me feel like I'm dying. Giving makes me feel like I'm living. And that was one of those lightning bolt things that to this day I can still see him saying it to me, and I can still hear him saying it to me. And it was so, when you hear something that's so profoundly true and yet you were unaware of it until that moment, it feels like somebody just clonked you with a shovel, right? And I'm saying, well, here's a guy who's dying, and the opportunity to get from other people is there for him at every moment, and he wants nothing to do with it. He just wants to give. There's something there that if I can apply it to my life when I'm young enough and healthy enough, I'm going to be a lot happier. And that was the turning point for me.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
What are you doing for teachers who feel that they're being stretched too thin? Did you understand how prevalent hunger was in your own community? Nearly a dozen hours after the eye roared ashore. There is some late breaking news.
All right,
The Meet the Press Chuck Toddcast, free wherever you get your podcasts.
Sometimes the news can be difficult and overwhelming for kids to understand.
Will coronavirus come back next year?
So to help make sense of it all, we've created a newscast just for them. Man, you know a lot. We hope your family will watch Nightly News Kids Edition. Our week-long journey across America. From Washington, D.C., a side of our nation's capital, you rarely see.
It's your last one.
Was talking smack part of this?
These days, the news never stops. The morning's headlines change by afternoon, and by the end of the day, it's all totally different. So let's get into it. What's happening right now, what it all means for you for an hour every day. I get it. I know that it can be hard to keep up. So let's get started together and go from there.
Hey, I'm Hallie Jackson, and we have a ton going on tonight. Here's the deal.
Hallie Jackson Now. Weekdays at 5 on NBC News Now. Make the most of your day with
Today in 30. We give you a mix of everything you love about our show in a mere 30 minutes.
Watch Today in 30 on your schedule. Streaming every day on Today All Day.
The Meet the Press Chuck Toddcast, free wherever you get your podcasts.
Did you take that then, even because the other days of the week, I would imagine you were still sprinting? Were you able to apply like the things he said then?
Not immediately.
Yeah.
I think this stuff is a slow boil.
Yeah.
I think it gets into, first you go home and you talk about it with your wife.
Yeah.
And she says, yeah, he's right, And so now that's two people who are kind of telling you. And you begin to start, it's like binoculars. When you first put them up, they're never in focus, but you just start to turn those things and they start to get in focus and you realize I'm turning the right direction.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm going to keep turning until they get really sharp. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of what happened with that idea. I said, this is the right direction. And I just kept turning it until it basically became my life.
So the hard charging you, because you were obviously hitting your stride in your field, and at that moment, did you how long did it take for you to really feel the change?
It took until Tuesdays with Maury came out.
Oh wow!
Because again, like I say, this was God or fate just saying, okay, let's see what direction you're going to go. So I took the first act of the Giving is Living. Honestly, was writing the book about Maury because I wrote it to pay his medical bills. Mm-hmm. And all the money went to him to pay his medical bills. It wasn't supposed to be, we weren't supposed to be sitting here, Hoda. You were never supposed to know who I was. I was never supposed to enter your world. I was going to be living out in the Midwest and being a sports writer. That was it. And, they printed, 20,000 total copies for the whole world.
Is that right?
Yeah. I thought I'd have them in the trunk of my car for the rest of my life. At Thanksgiving, I'd be giving them out to family members. And so it was supposed to be a big book, but I wanted to help him pay his medical bills because he didn't have the money to do it. And it was the first thing that was in front of me after he had kind of made this revelation about giving is living. And I'm saying, well, I can apply this right here. Because he told me, he said, I'm very afraid I don't have the money to pay for all these bills. And when I die, they're going to have to sell the house. And he said, I'm going to have two deaths. One when I go in the ground and one when I realize all the damage I'm doing in my family by incurring all these costs. So I began to start up this book, and I went right around where we are here sitting, around New York City, went around to a bunch of different publishers and said, I just need this much money to pay his bills. That's it. That's all I want. It's an amazing thing. I'm learning all these lessons from an old man talking to a young man. I think it could be a good book. And we got told no everywhere we went. Everywhere. No, boring. Nobody wants to read about that. It's depressing. You're a sports writer. I can't tell you how many people just told us to take a walk.
Did you almost throw in the towel, or did you just?
I almost did, except that it was for somebody else. I would have if it was for me.
Wow.
And that was when I learned that when you do things for other people, you have much more energy and passion than when for yourself. At least I do. I find it very hard to ask for things for myself. You know, I don't even like asking for a reservation for, you know, at a restaurant. But if it's for one of my kids, I'll go through a wall, and I'll be a pit dog.
So what happened?
We found one publisher who agreed 3 weeks before Maury died to publish the book. And I said, we need to get the money up front because I need to give it to him while he's alive. And I went, and Maury didn't know that I was doing any of this. And I went to him a few weeks before he died, and I said, listen, I got some good news. You know, this taping, he wanted me to write a thesis. And I didn't have the heart to tell him I wasn't enrolled in college anywhere. I'm not really sure I was going to write a thesis. Don't you have to be in school to write a thesis? And so I said to him, I got some good news. You know, this conversation we've been having. And I said, well, there's a publisher. I found a publisher wants to publish it. He said, really? Who? I said, Doubleday. He said, ooh, I heard of them. I said, yeah, well, not only that, but they're going to give us some money for it, and I want you to take all the money and pay your bills and don't die a second death. And I always tell people that for me, that was the end of Tuesdays with Maury, for me, because I had finally done one nice thing for this man who had done so many nice things for me up to that point in my life. I had finally actually learned a lesson and put it into action, you know. And so really it began there. But then when you asked that second part of your question, like when it kind of changed my life, well, from there I didn't write a word of Tuesdays with Maury until after Maury died. So he never saw any of it. That's what's so remarkable about that book. He continues to teach all these people, and Maury never saw a word of the book. It just goes to show you don't know in this life how you're going to influence things when you're gone. He had no idea that we'd be talking about him now, you know, 26 years later.
Yeah.
But he didn't need to, because that wouldn't have been the reason to do it. He wouldn't have said, hey, let's talk now so that Hoda will be asking you some questions one day on her podcast. He did it because it was from his heart. Wow. And when you do the things from your heart, they're right.
What did you lose the day he died?
A guidepost. You know, every week that I was in there, I knew that I could ask any question about my life and that he would give me the right answer. Not only because he was a great teacher and I loved him, but because he was about to step out of this world and he had it in perspective. And he was able to say to me so many times on little things that I would bring up, he'd say, Mitch, this matters. Mitch, this doesn't matter. Or, Mitch, you think this matters, but when you get to where I am, and then he would always say, and you will get to where I am, it's not going to matter. And I lost all of that. And I didn't have it again until my parents became, you know, older and frail before I lost both of them. And I would have discussions with my father the same way.
Did you?
Yeah.
Your dad was always a teacher too, or?
He was quiet, more reserved, but as he got older and you know, and he suffered a stroke and he's, you know, for a few years there, he was limited in his movement, but you know, I think he realized that the end was coming, and we had some good talks. That was the first time since Maury died that I felt that I was getting that kind of wisdom too, because he knew also life is short. We learn something at the end that we don't have at the beginning. We just get this perspective, and it's like you look over the precipice and you see, okay, this is really what life is. And then if you're lucky, you get to turn around and tell the people you love, hey, I'm about to go there. Let me tell you what I just realized.
Yeah.
Pay attention.
Yeah.
And I paid attention.
When was your dad the proudest of you?
Wow. That has never been asked of me before. I like to think it was when I got married, because I think he saw me as, you know, driven, like you were relating before, and to the point of maybe missing out on that part of life, because I didn't get married till I was 37. And, there were a lot of years there in your 20s, when your parents are going,
What are you doing?
well, yeah, what are you doing? How about this one? She's nice, how about this one? And so I think I remember when Janine and I told my parents, was on my dad's 65th birthday, and we were all gathered as a family, and that's when we broke the news. And I remember him jumping up from the table, like jumping up. I never saw my dad jump, and he jumped up from the table, had this big smile on his face. I said, I've never seen that. Like, you ever do that with your parents?
Yeah.
Like, I've not seen that look before. I thought I saw every look. I thought I knew everything about you. I've lived my whole life with you. And he gave me a look that I'd never seen before. So I think maybe it was that moment that he said, okay, we pulled him back from the from the abyss. He's going to be married. He'll have kids. He'll be a family person. Because my dad always felt that that's all that mattered. That was what was important to him.
Is it easier to pass a bipartisan bill right now than it is to pass a Democrats-only bill? This supply chain issue has been a problem for months. Do you concur that this is going to get worse before it gets better? Are you concerned about the direction of your party? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
Our world is facing some complex issues. Chuck Todd breaks them down. Every Thursday, a deep dive into a new subject.
Instead of covering a lot of topics in one show, we're going to focus on one and take a deeper look at how it impacts America.
Exploring and explaining the critical stories that affect our future. Meet the Press Reports. All episodes of Season 3 are now available on demand on Peacock.
The Sunday Sit Down with Willie Geist podcast. It's the conversations you want to have with the people you'd love to meet.
Get your money's worth.
Unedited, unfiltered.
See ya.
Sit down with Willie and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Our world is facing some complex issues. Chuck Todd breaks them down. Every Thursday, a deep dive into a new subject.
Instead of covering a lot of topics in one show, we're going to focus on one and take a deeper look at how it impacts America.
Exploring and explaining the critical stories that affect our future. Meet the Press Reports. All episodes of Season 3 are now available on demand on Peacock.
Is it easier to pass a bipartisan bill right now than it is to pass a Democrats-only bill? This supply chain issue has been a problem for months. Do you concur that this is going to get worse before it gets better? Are you concerned about the direction of your party? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press. The Meet the Press Chuck Toddcast, free wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
Today is now a podcast available every morning. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Did your dad get to see you with your kids?
Yes.
He did.
In fact, my dad met Chica.
Oh, he did.
Yeah. That was special.
You've written so many beautiful books. Finding Chica was so many moved me to my core, but that book in particular had so many moments in it. And it's about a young girl from your orphanage who you bring home with you to help care for her in all kinds of ways, you and your wife. And did you guys ever want kids of your own? You did?
Yeah. But, I dragged my feet on that.
Mm-hmm.
And next thing you know, you're in your 40s.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, it's not so easy.
Yeah.
And it's not like they told us in high school. And, that was my fault. We didn't get married till late, so we didn't have a big ramp up. And I shouldn't, it's probably the biggest regret of my life. But God works in funny ways, because now I've got 53 children, and so does my wife. And we look at them as our kids, and we know everything there is about them. And I'm there. I'm in Haiti every single month. These kids come up and stay with us, and they're all going to go to college right down the street from us. 4 of them are already there. We see them every weekend and during the week, and they come over. So I was very lucky. God granted me this escape hatch. Okay, well, you missed out on the natural way of doing it, but as Chica taught me, there's no one way to make a family. She was our daughter in every sense of the word, and I would never think of her as anything otherwise.
Will you relay, there's a part of the book, and it's about how you had to go off and write your column for the Super Bowl or something, and she was there in the house.
Yeah. Radio show.
Yeah, radio show.
Yeah. Well, at this point, Chica suffered from DIPG, which is a brain tumor that hits young kids, usually between ages 4 and 9, and usually takes them within 4 months. And we were advised to just take her back to Haiti and let her die because it wasn't, it was going to happen to her. And I knew that this kid was tough because she was rough and tumble from the time she came to us. She survived the earthquake when she was 3 days old. Her house fell down around her, and she and her mother, the roof fell backwards, from what I understand, and so it didn't land on top of them. It was just made out of tin, so it fell backwards, and she was like exposed to the heavens with the earth when the earth stopped trembling, but they were alive, and she was 3 days old. So I used to say to her, you survived an earthquake when you're 3 days old, you can do anything. And so we said, she was 5, and we said, we're not taking her back to die. I would never take a kid to die. We're going to fight as long as she wants to fight. And it turned out to be 2 years. And a lot of that 2 years was, she was buoyant and funny and had her faculties. She got swollen by steroids and things like that, treatments. We took her all over the world. We lived in Germany for a while, all this stuff. But she was there. She was present. And towards the end, she couldn't walk anymore. That was one of the things that she lost. But she was fine with that because I carried her everywhere. So I was her transportation. I'd take her to the bathroom. I'd take her to the car. I'd take her, and she would just lift her arms up and, okay, taxi. So we were sitting at the table, and we were coloring. And I looked at my watch. I realized I was late for this radio show. And I said, oh, Chica, I got to go. And she said, no, Mr. Mitch, just stay here and color with me. And I said, Chica, I have to work. And she said, Mr. Mitch, I have to play. Like, it was just perfectly parallel. And I said, but Chica, you don't understand. This is my job. And she crossed her arms and made that little pouty face. And she said, no, it isn't. Your job is carrying me. And just like that moment with Maury, I was like, oh, my God. What a sentence. I felt my whole soul drop down to my feet. And she didn't realize, of course, what she said, but I did. And of course she was right. My job was carrying her, not just at that moment, but for her life. And all of our jobs as parents are to carry our children through the hard times and the good times. And I realized that metaphor, because I would always, she was heavy, and I would have to really fill my arms up. And I realized, I used to carry around my books, my work, my awards, my paycheck, my status, my whatever it was. And then you have to drop all that to carry a 6 and 7-year-old around because she can't walk herself. And you realize it's no comparison. And what we choose to fill our arms up with and what we choose to carry is actually what ends up defining us. It's not us, it's what we choose to carry. And carrying her was the most honorable, best thing I've ever had an opportunity to do. And when I miss her, which is every minute of every day, I physically miss the sensation of every time I would lift her, I can do right here, and her head would go right here, and right next on my shoulder. And it was a privilege to carry her,
Make the most of your day with
Today in 30. We give you a mix of everything you love about our show in a mere 30 minutes.
Watch Today in 30 on your schedule, streaming every day on Today All Day. Our world is facing some complex issues. Chuck Todd breaks them down. Every Thursday, a deep dive into a new subject.
Instead of covering a lot of topics in one show, we're going to focus on one and take a deeper look at how it impacts America.
Exploring and explaining the critical stories that affect our future. Meet the Press Reports. All episodes of Season 3 are now available on demand on Peacock.
What are you doing for teachers who feel that they're being stretched too thin? Did you understand how prevalent hunger was in your own community?
Is this an issue about guns or is this an issue about social justice? This supply chain issue has been a problem for months. Do you concur that this is going to get worse before it gets better? The question is, are you now more open to packing the court? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
The Sunday Sit Down with Willie Geist podcast. It's the conversations you want to have with the people you'd love to meet.
Get your money's worth.
Unedited, unfiltered.
See ya.
Sit down with Willie and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
These days, the news never stops. The morning's headlines change by afternoon, and by the end of the day, it's all totally different. So let's get into it. What's happening right now, what it all means for you for an hour every day. I get it. I know that it can be hard to keep up. So let's get started together and go from there.
Hey, I'm Hallie Jackson, and we have a ton going on tonight. Here's the deal.
Hallie Jackson Now. Weekdays at 5 on NBC News Now.
Do you ever say to yourself or wonder, like there's so much love and there's also pain that goes with. Do you ever play the balancing game? Like a lot of people don't get the great love that you have, but they also don't feel the great loss.
Somebody much smarter than me once said that the only whole heart is a broken heart. And I have come as I've gotten older to realize that that's true. My mom used to say to me, I said, how old do you want to be, Mom? Why don't you live to 100? And she would say, I don't want to be the last one left. I don't want to watch everybody I love go. And of course, when you're younger, you don't really understand that. You don't understand how time runs out. But when you get older, and especially when your parents go, and you're kind of next in line now, you're the old one of the family, you start to think about that a lot. And I realized that they have to go hand in hand. They have to go hand in hand. And if you want to know those highs of that kind of love, the kind of love that can break your heart when you lose it, then you're going to have to endure the lows when you lose it. You should never, ever have to lose it from a child. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. I don't care if they were the worst person in the world. I watched Chica's last breath. My wife and I, we were on both sides of her in bed, and I carried her out to the hearse or car, whatever it's called. They were kind enough to all wait outside. They weren't inside the house. And as Haitian tradition is, you wash the body and nice and clean, and she had a beautiful dress, and I carried her in that dress out to that car. And when they took her away from me, I can't really describe that moment, except it literally was like somebody was able to reach inside my chest and they pulled half of my soul out and put it in that car and drove away with it. And I fell, physically fell to the concrete of the driveway, and I couldn't get up. I was just sobbing. And my wife Janine was with me too. And that's the flip side of loving somebody so much. That's the flip side of loving somebody. But try to put a little positive on this.
Okay, yes.
And in this new book that I wrote, which is about, I don't go into the whole thing, but it's about a bunch of people who were shipwrecked on a boat.
It's called The Stranger in the Lifeboat.
It's called The Stranger in the Lifeboat.
Yes.
And one of these survivors of a boat crash claims to be God, because they were all calling, God help us, and then he floats. After 3 days, he just floats out of the ocean, and they pull him in, and they say, "Who are you?" And he says, "I'm the Lord." "And what are you doing here?" "Well, you asked for me.
You called for me.
You called for me." And at one point later in the book, one of the characters says to him, "Why did you take my wife?" He's mourning his wife. And he goes into this talk about how I know that all of my children cry when they lose their loved ones, but I promise you, those who are lost are not crying. And, I think I wrote that almost as therapy, because I like to think of Chica like I lost her, but heaven gained her, and she got her smile back, and she got her running back. And when I wrote that sentence, I remember I was typing it, and sometimes you labor with a sentence when you're a writer. Wrong word, the wrong verb, and that one just spilled out. You cry, but I assure you they do not. And I thought, okay, that came out way too easy for it to be, just writing. There's something more
Yeah,
than
I
writing.
have just for the record, I have chills like right now, right all over me.
Yeah.
Make the most of your day with
Today in 30. We give you a mix of everything you love about our show in a mere 30 minutes.
Watch Today in 30 on your schedule, streaming every day on Today All Day.
Our week-long journey across America, from Washington, D.C., outside of our nation's capital, you rarely see.
Is your last?
Was talking smack part of this?
The Meet the Press Chuck Toddcast, free wherever you get your podcasts.
Make the most of your day with
Today in 30. We give you a mix of everything you love about our show in a mere 30 minutes.
Savannah and Hoda bring you what you must know. The biggest moments of the morning.
One Republic!
Exclusive interviews.
Why did it work for you?
You're right. I am more talented than the rest.
And important headlines.
Major medical news this morning.
Watch Today in 30 on your schedule, streaming every day on Today All Day.
Is it easier to pass a bipartisan bill right now than it is to pass a Democrats-only bill? This supply chain issue has been a problem for months. Do you concur that this is going to get worse before it gets better? Are you concerned about the direction of your party? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
Our week-long journey across America, from Washington, D.C., outside of our nation's capital, you rarely see.
Is your last?
Was talking smack part of this?
Is it easier to pass a bipartisan bill right now than it is to pass a Democrats-only bill? This supply chain issue has been a problem for months. Do you concur that this is going to get worse before it gets better? Are you concerned about the direction of your party? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
I mean, God is clearly a prominent force in your life, in your writing, and as we sit here, I can feel it too. Just explain God's role in your life.
Well, I separate God from religion, I think it's just too magnificent a world not to have been designed. The human body, which I got to know way more than I wanted to with Chica, and they explain how your brain works and all, every little facet of it. It's just scientists have come to the same conclusion. Scientists who began by saying there's no such thing as God, you can't prove it or whatever, end up saying, well, you know what, there's no other explanation because this is just too complex. Nobody could just sit down and let's design this thing. And the joy in the world is too magnificent for it to just have been, we're just worm food when we're done. So for me, God is the belief that there is a bigger source of everything that's going on here, and therefore it's okay to aspire to bigger things and not just what we're going to get while we're here. Because if we really knew that there was nothing and that it was just a race to the finish, I think everybody would just start, grabbing for themselves and say, what do I care about laws? What do I care about respect? What do I care about decency? It doesn't matter. When we die, we die, we die. As long as I stay one step ahead of the law, I'm fine, But the reason that we don't do that and the reason that we're kind to other people is that we have this sense that there's something bigger than all of us that ties us all together. And some people call that God, some people call that spirituality, some people call that heaven, some people call that humanity. But I think it's all tied up. I think God is more a piece of each one of us than necessarily this big, huge silhouetted figure up in the sky. And I look for the God in everybody. And more often than not, if you look, you find it, And so I try to work that way and write that way.
Do you think, I was just thinking about the number of, kids you're caring for and the long, beautiful road ahead, watching them go all the way to college. Do you think you have a finite amount of space in your heart and soul for others, or do you think you can? Because I was just looking at your plate and it seems super full, and I don't. I'm asking for a friend because I also sometimes think I have room for more, and you wonder, do you, or is there always room? Is there a time where you say, okay?
If there is a time where you say, okay, it's when it starts to come at the expense of the other important things in your heart.
Yeah.
But not when it comes at the expense of, well, then we can't take the Italy trip.
Oh, right. Right.
Or then we can't, or then I might not be able to get that, promotion or whatever. Then I think you still probably have some space that you haven't used.
Mm-hmm.
But if you find, 53 kids is a lot of kids.
Mm-hmm.
But it just makes you say, okay, pretty much every day to pretty much every kid, I will go up when I'm there and say, did I tell you today how much I love you? And sometimes I say it because just I'm teasing them. Sometimes I say I'm forgetting if I did or not. And they say, you told me this morning. I said, okay, as long as I told you. And so you just have to change. You just have to move things around a little bit. And but I think love is a pretty elastic sensation and emotion. And if there is a wall to it, I haven't reached it yet. I think the other part that goes with that is pushing the walls out to receive love. Because a lot of people, and Maury taught me that in a very big way. He said, your problem isn't going to be in giving love out to people. It's going to be in accepting it.
Oh.
You don't think you're worth it. You don't think you warrant it.
Wait, that's big.
Yeah.
That's a big statement.
Very big. And I think a lot of people, they think their problem with love is that, that they can't find somebody to give it to or whatever. But a lot of the times the problem is they don't know how to receive it. Someone wants to love them and they back off, they run away. It's that joke about, I don't want to be part of any club that would have somebody like me as a member, the Groucho Marx thing. And, you got to get over that too.
Yeah. So how did you learn to receive it? What did you do?
I think I began to learn with my wife.
Yeah.
And I really learned with the kids because love and need are often connected, and I see that, they had no one else. And when Chica's brother, so Chica had a baby brother, her mother died giving birth to that baby brother. So therefore, the whole reason that Chica ended up in our lives was because the baby brother was born, who she never saw. Because on the day that he was born, he was taken away, she was taken away, she was brought to us, he was raised by somebody else. On her funeral, day of her funeral in Haiti, the uncle who had been taking care of him found out and came to the funeral. And afterwards they came back to the orphanage. He looks just like she did at 3. He was 3 years old. And the uncle pulls me aside and he says, listen, I've been raising this boy, but I have 3 kids of my own. I don't have a job. I don't have any money. We barely can get by. And I'm looking around at your orphanage here. Is there any way you could take him?
Wow.
So I looked at him and he looked just like Chica. And I said, Moise is his name, Moise like Moses. And I said, Moise. And he looked at me, it was about over there where that trash can is. I said, Vini, which means come. And he took one look at me and then he ran and jumped into my arms. And I said, well, this is a done deal. And we made room. And then we found out that she had an older sister. And we invited her to come. She was being raised by somebody else, not even related to her. And she came and spent a day with us and a night with us. And the next day, they were supposed to come pick her up. And she was 9. And on her own, she went to the security guard and she said, if those people come back for me, tell them I'm not here. She was 9. She wanted to stay. And so now she lives with us.
Oh, my gosh.
And so you just make room. And, you don't even think about it. You just say, come, and they jump in your arms, and there they are. And then you find the space and you find the room.
Sometimes the news can be difficult and overwhelming for kids to understand.
Will coronavirus come back next year?
So to help make sense of it all, we've created a newscast just for them. Man, you know a lot. We hope your family will watch Nightly News Kids Edition. What are you doing for teachers who feel that they're being stretched too thin? Did you understand how prevalent hunger was in your own community?
These days, the news never stops. The morning's headlines change by afternoon, and by the end of the day, it's all totally different. So let's get into it. What's happening right now, what it all means for you for an hour every day. I get it. I know that it can be hard to keep up. So let's get started together and go from there.
Hey, I'm Hallie Jackson, and we have a ton going on tonight. Here's the deal.
Hallie Jackson Now. Weekdays at 5 on NBC News Now.
Is this an issue about guns or is this an issue about social justice? This supply chain issue has been a problem for months. Do you concur that this is going to get worse before it gets better? The question is, are you now more open to packing the court? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
Make the most of your day with
Today in 30. We give you a mix of everything you love about our show in a mere 30 minutes.
Savannah and Hoda bring you what you must know. The biggest moments of the morning.
One Republic!
Exclusive interviews.
Why did it work for you?
You're right. I am more talented than the rest.
And important headlines.
Major medical news this morning.
Watch Today in 30 on your schedule. Streaming every day on Today All Day.
Sometimes the news can be difficult and overwhelming for kids to understand.
Will coronavirus come back next year?
So to help make sense of it all, we've created a newscast just for them. Man, you know a lot. We hope your family will watch Nightly News Kids Edition.
I feel like each of your books is full of like life lessons. And I've been thinking about that with this podcast because I feel like sometimes you want to walk away with something. The lessons from Maury are riveting. The lessons from your own life are blowing my mind. Is there a lesson from your mom maybe that stood out from another book, or is there?
From my mom?
Yeah.
Yeah. My mom said, my mom gave me two great pieces of advice. One, the masses are asses. That's what she used to say all the time. And I never knew when I was younger that I would be in a life where I would ever be concerned with masses, But it's grown into that, and that when times when people criticize you or whatever, or just when you analyze the world, and wow, so many people are Snapchatting or whatever, and you realize the masses are asses. So I never forgot that one. And the other one she said is, listen, you're going to be lucky if you have one or two good friends in your life. And if you're really lucky, you'll marry to one of them. And I did. And she did and I did. Yeah, those are the two best things.
You got wise people in your life,
I did.
Can you even believe that?
I am a sieve for the wisdom of other people and older people. The one thing that I don't know where it came from in my life, but I'm very, very, very grateful that it did, is that even when I was a little boy, I was interested in older people. And a lot of my friends, cousins, brother, sister, at the Thanksgiving table after the meal was done, and they were older, the uncles and aunts, the old country, they'd all be sitting around. All the other kids bolted. They just bolted from, can we go now? Can we go? And then they went play. I would sit at the table and just listen to them tell their stories. And people ask me about, where'd you learn how to write? What school did you go to? I said, I didn't go to any school to write. I learned how to write at the dinner table and at the Thanksgiving table, just listening to my relatives tell stories and watching how who got to command the floor. And, like if I had an old aunt who was stuck on the details, like it was 1944. No, wait, it was 1945. Maybe it was 44. Shut up. And they move off to somebody else. Then I have my Uncle Eddie and he'd say, so there we were coming over the hill, see? And they were shooting at us. And I said to my buddy, look at them, they're over there. And you're riveted. You say, wow, that's how you tell a story.
Right.
He ended up becoming the Eddie of the 5 people you meet in heaven. That's who he was. Yeah. And so I I always listened to older people and liked it. And if you look at my life as it's turned out in my books, there's Maury. In Have a Little Faith, there's you know, Rabbi Lewis and Henry Covington. Rabbi Lewis was in his 90s. And then it kind of came full circle with Chica, because I was now the older one, and I was listening to a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old. And by the way, you can learn just as much from a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old as you can from a 50 and 60-year-old. And I just like absorbing the wisdom of other people and seeing if I can share it with the people that I write for.
I mean, I feel like you live your life of service, and I only know this because, you know,
Because I'm always hitting you up for charitable
you know what
things.
it is? You're never, like you said, you never ask for anything for yourself. Never, never, never. But your charity in Detroit, for the kids in Detroit, the homeless kids in Detroit, I hear your passion on the radio talking about them. And I asked this of my friend, Maria Shriver's a good friend of mine, and she's very much of service. And I said to her, how did this come to be? And she said, well, you know, my mom, you know, started the Special Olympics and my dad started the Peace Corps. She said they never once mentioned the word service. They just did it. I watched them do it. And I never thought anything other than, oh, this is what we do.
Yeah.
It wasn't taught that way, but I was just curious because your life is so full of that. Was it taught? Was it just something that came? Like, you know,
it wasn't taught on a program kind of let's go do this charity level. It was taught by my parents in the way that they treated everybody around them.
They did, yeah.
And when they had friends that I later discovered, you know, hit financial troubles, they helped take care of them. And they didn't have money themselves, but they helped take care of them. And when relatives got, you know, sick or had a heart attack, they let them move in. And, you know, their whole life was just taken care of. My dad, when he was 16, my mother was 15. Her father died of a heart attack right in front of her, just keeled over and died, 15. And he moved in when he was 16. It was her first boyfriend, first girlfriend. And he moved into the house, basically. He didn't sleep there, but he came over every single day and took care of the household because my grandmother was, you know, she was out of it, you know, she was in shock. And he helped raise my uncle, my mom's younger brother. And I said to him, you were 16.
Yeah, kid.
Like I was 16. You know, all I wanted to do was play in a little rock and roll band and ride my bicycle to my girlfriend's house. And he was like, you know, cooking and helping to pay the bills and all that. And I realized like it's in his DNA and it's in the two of their DNAs to help other people wherever they see. I had an opportunity to do it on a somewhat of a larger stage because I had these chances, I had these opportunities, but I do think it comes from it just comes from the good feeling that you get from doing it. Giving is living. You know, I know Maria a little bit, and you know, I think she feels the same way that you've seen, especially someone like Maria. You know, she's seen the alternative. Yeah. She's seen what it's like to have a lot. And it doesn't give you that same sense of satisfaction. It doesn't. I'm never happier than when I sleep in Haiti on a 4-inch mattress, you know, and I don't ever set an alarm clock because I wake up at 5:45 in the morning with kids screaming and squealing outside the window. And I think, and it's hot and it's uncomfortable and you're not using nice sheets and all, you know, there's no hot water and there's, you know, you're thinking already, well, I can never take a shower until this point. And none of that stuff matters, you know, it's just that you're there, you know, you're needed. And knowing that you're needed is the most satisfying, I think, interaction of the human emotions to help someone who is in need. Makes you calm in a way that grabbing things to make yourself richer or bigger never will.
And I don't want to end with any life advice because you've given us such great advice, but is there something that you've that you've kind of been carrying with you? Is there a little piece we can just kind of put a button on this? And I'm going to again remind people that the book is called The Stranger in the Lifeboat. It's out November.
November 2nd.
Right?
Yeah.
And everyone's been a bestseller. Half of them are movies. It's crazy. Do you ever go like, uh-oh, is this going to be a bestseller? Or do you just put it out in the universe and come what may?
The times for uh-oh are long past me. Yeah. I'm just looking for the energy at this point.
Oh, I like
no
it.
uh-ohs.
I like the attitude. I
Yeah.
like it.
I don't know. I just find as I get older that the only thing that really energizes me the way that when I was younger everything seemed to is children. And I think as we become more disillusioned with how we as adults are behaving, we look to children. And I see this in you, when we talk all the time. I see this in you, when you talk about your children. It's not just a mother's pride in her children. It's like hope.
Yeah.
It's like hope. You see your position enables you to see everything, and you always keep a great smile on, but you've seen plenty of ugliness, and you've seen plenty of bad behavior by people, and you report on it, and you're talking about it. And then these kids come along, and they're so pure, and they're just filled with all the goodness that we have somehow tarnished as we've gotten older or stained or put aside for other things. And you just see in them, maybe if I can guide them correctly, they won't make the mistakes that I made, and they'll keep this joy. They'll keep this passion for life, and you show me your daughter with a lollipop, like a lollipop is going to be, or Bianca, who you just met before. She came to New York City with all the buildings and all that, and she wanted to catch a pigeon. That's all she wanted to do was hold the pigeon. I had to tell her, pigeons are poison. They're rats with wings. What are you doing? And she just wanted to hold a pigeon. But you want to keep that, You just want to hold on to that. So anybody who's feeling a little down or a little blue about the world or depressed about the way we're going at each other's throats in this country, find a child that needs help and just spend time with it, and you will be renewed, because that's nature or God's way of just reminding us we were like that once, and there's great goodness and kindness inside every child's heart. If we can just hang on to it, we can learn a lot from them.
Mitch, thank you. Thank you for sitting with me. It was beautiful.
Thanks for inviting me. My pleasure. All good?
I want to cry for an hour.
You're a natural at this.
No, I need to go home. I need to.
No.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
A little too short.
Yeah, you're making me cry a couple of times. So I see tears in your eyes, and then I'm start crying. It's very infectious.
By the way, it's so beautiful what you're doing, and these kids, man.
They're great.
Oh my gosh!
I sent you that latest picture in front of the purple wall.
Love all of it.
So many.
It's like.
Yeah.
So how do you how does your life work out in over a month? You go to Haiti for part of it. You come home.
Yeah.
How do you?
I go to Haiti for usually at least 1 week of the month.
Right.
And I go every month. Then I'm back. I'm on the phone with them every single day,
of course,
and managing things, and I oversee the whole operation. But we have some good people, good volunteers,
right?
And we're trying to. The main thing now is we're trying to get to a new place, because we're for 12 years we've been. Well, the place itself goes back 30 years. We're in the ghetto, and we have like a third of an acre. We don't have a blade of grass. Everything is busted up concrete. So I'm trying to get us to a new place. That's my big goal. Is to get a new thing. But yeah, I just do the other stuff in between. I get up in the morning. I sit outside my little. I sleep right there with the kids. I just sit outside at the picnic table and I write my books. And they come over and they sit in my lap and they lean against me. And half the time, I'm writing left-handed because they're over here. But I can concentrate down there for whatever reason.
You can.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then when I come home here, I take care of the business part of life and the Detroit stuff, which is there's a lot of it. I'm not one-on-one with the kids in Detroit like I am here, but there's a lot of charities in Detroit. And then I'm back there again, and it's like a great balance, whenever things just start to feel too American, for want of a better word, like, politics, Fox News, all the stuff that, I just disappear, and I go to a place where there's no internet, there's no phones, there's no computers, there's no television. So it's pure
yeah.
childhood. You know, it's
Yeah.
poor children. You know, these kids they'll take your arm and put it around them because nobody taught them that it's not cool. Because we don't have cool. We're all a bunch of nerds, you know, like there's no cool. We have no mirrors there. Nobody even
Wow.
looks at their reflection, you know, they're just.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.